The morning Jake McAllister was supposed to die started with the taste of copper in his mouth and the thunder of hooves shaking the ground beneath his boots. "Get that son of a bitch!" Clay Morrison's voice cut through the dusty air of Deadwood Junction like a rusty blade. $500 to the man who brings me his head." Jake's lungs burned as he sprinted down the main street, his worn leather boots slipping on the loose gravel. Behind him, 6 riders were gaining ground, their horses' breath visible in the cool September morning of 1882. The sun had barely crept over the Colorado Rockies, painting the frontier town in shades of gold and shadow, but there was nothing beautiful about this sunrise. Not when death was riding hard on his heels. A bullet whistled past his ear so close he felt the heat of it. Jake dove left, rolling behind a water trough as wood exploded where his head had been a second before. His Colt. .45 was in his hand before he finished the roll, but 6 bullets against 12 men weren't odds even a fool would take. "You should have taken Morrison's offer." McAllister, Bull Henderson Morrison's enforcer, dismounted with the grace of a falling boulder. The man stood 6'4" and had fists like ham hocks. "Nobody says no to Mr. Morrison and lives to brag about it." Jake spat blood from where he'd bitten his tongue during the roll. "I'd rather die standing than live on my knees, Bull." "That can be arranged." The general store's back door was 20 feet away, 20 feet of open ground with no cover. Jake counted the seconds between shots. Morrison's men were cocky, taking their time enjoying the hunt. They thought they had him cornered like a rabbit in a trap. They were wrong. Jake burst from cover, zigzagging as bullets chewed up the dirt around him. 15 feet, 10, 5. He crashed through the door, shoulder first, wood splintering around him as he tumbled into darkness that smelled of flour, leather, and gun oil. "What in the blazing hell?" The voice stopped him cold. Not because it was angry, but because it was female, and because its owner was pointing a shotgun at his face with hands that didn't shake even a little. Jake's first thought was that he'd never seen a woman quite like her. Not pretty in the conventional sense, she had a scar running from her left temple to her jaw. Her nose had been broken at least once, and her hands were rough and calloused like a blacksmith's. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, revealing a face that had seen too much sun and too little kindness. But her eyes, green as spring grass after rain, held a fire that made pretty seem like a word for lesser women. "You brought trouble to my store," she said, her voice flat as winter ice. "Lady, I." The front windows exploded in a shower of glass. Elellanar Thornwood, though Jake didn't know her name yet, didn't flinch. She swung the shotgun toward the window and fired both barrels. Someone outside screamed. "That was my last window, you bastards," she shouted, already reloading with practiced efficiency. "Do you have any idea how much glass costs out here?" Jake stared at her momentarily, forgetting the men trying to kill him. "You just shot at Clay Morrison's gang." "I shot at idiots breaking my property." She pumped the shotgun. "They're a difference. They'll kill you for that. They'll try." She looked at him, then really looked at him, and Jake felt like she was measuring his worth down to the last cent. "You Jake McAllister. How do you? Whole town knows Morrison's been trying to recruit you for weeks. Also know you kept refusing." She moved toward a shelf, pulled it aside to reveal a trap door. "Question is, are you worth saving?" "Lady, I don't even know you." Elellanar Thornwood, Ellie to absolutely nobody. She yanked open the trapdoor, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. "This leads to the old smuggling tunnels from the Silver Rush days. Goes all the way to the creek. You can escape that way." "Why would you help me?" Another window shattered. Morrison's men were surrounding the building. "Because any enemy of Clay Morrison is a friend of mine." Her smile was sharp as broken glass. "And because you're going to owe me, big." Jake didn't have time to ask what she meant. Bull Henderson's massive frame filled the doorway, his gun raising toward Eleanor. "No." Jake moved without thinking, tackling Eleanor behind the counter as Bull's shot splintered wood above their heads. They landed hard, Jake's body covering hers instinctively. She smelled like soap and gunpowder, an oddly intoxicating combination. "Get off me!" she hissed, but her hand was already reaching for something under the counter. A second shotgun, this one modified with a shortened barrel. Elellanar Thornwood. Morrison's cultured voice drifted through the broken window. "I should have known you'd involve yourself in this, still trying to be your daddy's little hero." Eleanor's face went white, then red. "Don't you dare speak of my father, you murdering snake. Your father was a fool who didn't know when to mind his own business. Seems the apple didn't fall far from the tree." Jake felt Eleanor's body tense like a spring about to snap. "Easy," he whispered. "That's what he wants. To make you angry so you'll make a mistake." She looked at him surprised. "You don't even know me. Why do you care if I get myself killed?" "Because you're the first person in this godforsaken town who's helped me without wanting something in return." "Who says I don't want something?" She smiled and it transformed her face. Not into beauty exactly, but into something far more dangerous. "Besides, I really hate these assholes." "Come out, Mallister," Morrison called. "Face your death like a man not hiding behind a woman's skirts." "I'm wearing pants, you pompous ass," Eleanor shouted back, making Jake choke on an unexpected laugh. "You find this funny?" she asked. "Lady, I'm about to die and you're arguing about your wardrobe. Yeah, I find it a little funny. You're not dying in my store. The blood would stain the floorboards." She pulled a box of shells from under the counter. "How many bullets you got?" "4. I've got 12 shotgun shells and 6 in my daddy's Colt." She met his eyes. "Think we can take them?" "There's 12 of them." "I can count." "We'll die." "Probably." She loaded her shotgun with steady hands. "But I've been waiting 3 years for an excuse to shoot Clay Morrison. Might as well be today." Jake studied her face, saw the pain hidden behind the bravado. "He killed your father. Among other things." She stood suddenly, fired through the window, dropped back down as return fire peppered the wall. "You going to help me or not, cowboy?" Jake made his decision. "What's the plan? We survive the next 5 minutes, then we'll see." The front door exploded inward. 3 men rushed in, guns blazing. Eleanor rolled left, Jake right. His Colt barked twice, 2 men down. Eleanor's shotgun boomed. The 3rd man flew backward through the door. "The tunnel," Eleanor shouted, but it was too late. More men were pouring in through the back door. They were surrounded. "Well, hell," Jake muttered. "My thoughts exactly." Eleanor stood slowly, shotgun still in her hands, but pointed at the floor. "Morrison, you want to talk? Let's talk." Clay Morrison entered the store like he owned it, which Jake realized he probably did. The man was everything Jake hated about the new breed of frontier baron, silk vest, gold watch chain boots that had never seen honest dirt. His face was handsome in a cruel way, with pale blue eyes that reminded Jake of winter ice over deep water. "Miss Thornwood, you've caused me considerable trouble today." "Day's young," she replied. Morrison's gaze shifted to Jake. "Mr. Mallister, last chance. Join my organization or hang for horse theft." "I never stole a horse in my life." "No, but Sheriff Johnson will swear you did. Won't you, Sheriff?" The sheriff stepped through the ruined doorway, his badge glinting in the morning sun. "Saw it with my own eyes. Took Mr. Morrison's prize stallion right from the stable." "That's a lie," Jake said. "Truth is what I say it is in this town," Morrison replied. "So what'll it be, rope or riches?" Eleanor laughed. It wasn't a pretty sound. "You really think he'll join you after this, so you just chased him through town like a dog?" Morrison backhanded her casually, splitting her lip. Jake started forward, but 3 guns swung his way. "Don't," Eleanor said, spitting blood. "I've had worse from better men." Morrison's face darkened. "You always did have a mouth on you, just like your mother. War party coming in fast." The store erupted in chaos. Morrison's men forgot about Jake and Eleanor running to the windows to look. Sure enough, dust clouds on the horizon announced riders coming hard, lots of them. "This isn't possible," Sheriff Johnson stammered. "The tribes are peaceful. We have treaties." The first arrow took him in the throat. He gurgled, eyes wide with surprise, then fell. "Everyone out!" Morrison commanded, still holding his bleeding face. "Defensive positions." His men scrambled to obey, flooding out of the store to face this new threat. In seconds, Jake and Eleanor were alone except for Morrison, who stood between them and the door, his gun wavering between them and the approaching war party. "This isn't over," he snarled. Eleanor smiled, blood still on her lips. "Actually, it is." She said something in a language Jake didn't recognize, musical flowing sounds that seemed impossible coming from her rough frontier mouth. Morrison's eyes widened. "You speak Lakota, among other things." The war cries were getting closer. Gunfire erupted in the street. Morrison looked between them, and the door made his choice and ran. Eleanor grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go, now." "What's happening? How did you know?" "Questions later. Running now." She dragged him to the tunnel entrance, practically shoving him down the ladder. The last thing Jake saw before darkness swallowed them was a native warrior appearing in the doorway and nodding at Eleanor with what looked like respect. The tunnel was pitch black and smelled of earth and rot. Eleanor struck a match, lighting a lantern that had been waiting at the bottom. "Follow me and try not to die," she said. "That's been my plan all morning." They moved quickly through the narrow passage, their footsteps echoing off damp stone. Above them, Jake could hear gunfire screams, the thunder of horses. "Friends of yours?" he asked. "Something like that."
"Ben."
"You want to explain what just happened?" "I saved your life, twice by my count. And I saved yours from Bull." "Fair point." She stopped at a junction, chose the left passage without hesitation. "Chief Red Sky owes me a favor. Several, actually. You asked a Lakota war chief to attack the town. I asked him to make it look like an attack. Nobody's actually dying up there. Well, except Sheriff Johnson, but that was personal. He helped Morrison frame my father for cattle rustling before they killed him." Jake stopped walking. "This was planned." "Not all of it. You showing up was unexpected but useful." She turned to face him, the lantern casting dancing shadows on the tunnel walls. "Morrison's been bleeding this town dry for 3 years. The federal marshal we wrote to never came. Morrison probably killed him. The sheriff's bought and paid for. What would you have done?" "Probably gotten myself killed trying to shoot my way out." "Exactly. Men always think the answer is more bullets." She started walking again. "Sometimes the answer is patience and planning, and fake Indian attacks. Red Sky's people have been blamed for every crime Morrison commits anyway. Might as well use it to our advantage." They emerged from the tunnel into bright sunlight near the creek about a quarter mile from town. Smoke was rising from several buildings, but Jake could see the war party was already withdrawing their work done. "Now what?" he asked. Eleanor pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. "Now you marry me." Jake nearly choked. "What?" "There's an old territorial law. Newlyweds can't be compelled to testify against each other and can't be arrested for crimes allegedly committed before their marriage without a federal judge's warrant." She held up the paper. "Marriage license, already filled out. Just needs witnesses and a minister." "You're insane." "I'm practical. Morrison will have you hanged for horse theft unless you have protection. This gives you that." "What's in it for you?" She was quiet for a moment, looking back toward town. "I need to get to Fort Laramie within 7 days. There's something there, evidence that will destroy Morrison, but I can't make the journey alone. Too dangerous for a woman." "So you want a bodyguard?" "I want a partner, temporary. Once we reach Fort Laramie, we can annul the marriage. You'll be free to go wherever you want." "And if I say no?" "Then you hang tomorrow. Morrison owns every judge for 500 miles except at Fort Laramie." She met his eyes. "I'm offering you a chance to live, Mallister, and maybe do some good along the way." Jake looked at her, this strange, scarred, magnificent woman who'd just orchestrated a fake Indian attack to save his life. "You had this whole thing planned before I crashed through your door." "I had pieces of a plan. You gave me the rest." She held out her hand. "But what do you say, cowboy? Want to marry the most unwanted woman in Colorado." "Why do they call you that? Look at me." She gestured to her scarred face, her rough hands, her mannish clothes. "I'm 28, unmarried. I can outshoot most men. I speak 3 languages, including Lakota, and I refuse to simper and smile when men talk down to me. In frontier terms, I might as well be a leper." "You're also the bravest woman I've ever met." She blinked, surprised. "That's the head injury talking." "I don't have a head injury." "You will if you don't answer my question. Yes or no, Mallister?" Jake looked back toward town where Morrison was probably already planning his execution. Then he looked at Eleanor, waiting with patient eyes and steady hands. "Where's the minister?" Her smile was like sunrise after a storm. "Follow me." They found Reverend Josiah Mills hiding in his root cellar on the edge of town, clutching a bottle of whiskey and a Bible with equal fervor. "Absolutely not," he said when Eleanor explained what she wanted. "Morrison will kill me." "Morrison will kill you anyway, eventually," Eleanor replied. "At least this way you do something good first." I can't perform a marriage without witnesses. Already handled. Eleanor whistled sharp and clear. Two figures emerged from the trees, an elderly Chinese man with a medical bag and a young Mexican woman carrying a rifle. This is Dr. Chen and Maria Santos, Eleanor said. They'll witness. You had this all planned, Jake said, half admiring, half unnerved. I've had 3 years to plan, Eleanor replied. Morrison took everything from me. I'm just returning the favor. The ceremony was perhaps the strangest in frontier history. The Reverend performed it at gunpoint, Eleanor's gun, since she didn't trust him not to run. Maria stood guard while Dr. Chen served as both witness and makeshift best man. The church bell tolled in the distance, this time announcing the all clear. Do you, Jake McAllister, take this woman? Just skip to the important parts, Reverend Eleanor interrupted. We're on a schedule. The Reverend's face went red. This is a sacred ceremony. This is a business arrangement. Eleanor looked at Jake. No offense. None taken. Do you take her? The Reverend asked Jake, clearly wanting this over. Jake looked at Eleanor, her scarred face set with determination, her green eyes holding secrets he couldn't begin to guess. I do. Do you take him? The Reverend asked Eleanor. Until Fort Laramie do us part, she said, then caught the Reverend's glare. I mean, I do. I pronounce you married. Don't expect me to say kiss the bride. Wouldn't dream of it, Eleanor said. Now write us a certificate. Make sure the date and time are clear. As the Reverend wrote, Jake heard horses approaching, lots of them. Company, Maria said, raising her rifle. Morrison rounded the corner with 8 men, his face bandaged where Eleanor had cut him. There you are. Afternoon, Clay, Eleanor said pleasantly. Lovely day for a wedding. Morrison's eyes went to the certificate and the Reverend's shaking hands. What did you do? Got married. You're not invited to the reception. This changes nothing. He's still a horse thief. Allegedly. And you can't arrest him without a federal warrant now. Newlywed protection, remember, law you helped pass to protect your own men when they married those mail-order brides you brought in. Morrison's face went purple. You think you're clever. I think I'm married, she took Jake's arm, and my husband and I have a honeymoon to get to. You won't make it 10 miles out of town. Want to bet? She smiled that dangerous smile again. Oh wait, you already did. How's the face, by the way? Morrison reached for his gun. Jake was faster at his Colt clearing leather and aimed before Morrison's hand touched his pistol. I wouldn't, Jake said quietly. You won't shoot me. You're a lawman at heart, McAllister. You don't kill in cold blood. I'm not a lawman anymore, and you just threatened my wife. The word wife felt strange in his mouth, but the effect on Eleanor was immediate. She straightened slightly, her hand finding his arm, not possessive, but partnership, unity. Morrison backed down, but his eyes promised murder. This isn't over. It never is with you. Eleanor pulled Jake toward the horses Dr. Chen had brought. But for now, it's done. Come on, husband. We've got miles to make before dark. As they mounted the horses, Jake whispered, We really doing this, having second thoughts? No, just wondering what I've gotten myself into. Eleanor laughed, and for the first time it sounded genuinely happy. Me too, Cowboy, me too. They rode out of Deadwood Junction as the sun peaked overhead, officially married and unofficially doomed. Behind them, Morrison stood in the street watching them go. His hand went to his bandaged face. Bully, he said to his enforcer. Get the trackers, the good ones. You want them followed. I want them dead, but not quick. I want them to suffer first. He turned to Bull. And bring me the Pinkerton files on McAllister, all of them. Bull's eyes widened. You mean he's really... Yes, he just doesn't know we know. Morrison smiled coldly. Jake McAllister isn't just some drifting cowboy. He's the man who cost me a fortune in Kansas, and now he's married to the one woman in Colorado who might actually be able to destroy me. What about the evidence she mentioned at Fort Laramie? Morrison's smile widened. Oh, that. She's in for quite a surprise when she opens that strongbox, if she lives that long. Meanwhile, 5 miles out of town, Jake and Eleanor stopped at a grove of cottonwoods to water the horses. We should keep moving, Jake said, scanning the horizon. We need supplies first. Eleanor dismounted and walked to a large rock, pushing it aside to reveal a hidden cache. I've been preparing for 3 years, remember? She pulled out saddlebags loaded with ammunition, food, medical supplies, and a locked strongbox that took both hands to lift. What's in that? Jake asked. Our future, or Morrison's end, depending on how you look at it. You going to tell me what this is really about? Eleanor looked at him, seeming to weigh his trustworthiness. My father found documents proving Morrison's been stealing land from homesteaders. Murder, forgery, bribery, it's all there. But the originals are in a federal judge's safe in Fort Laramie. This box contains copies and something else. Something Morrison doesn't know I have. Which is a signed confession from one of his men, Thomas Mallister. Jake's world tilted. What did you say, Thomas Mallister? He's been working for Morrison for 2 years. She studied his face, saw the blood drain from it. You know him? He's my brother. Jake's voice was hollow. He's supposed to be dead. Eleanor's hand went to her gun. You're working with Morrison. No. Jake held up his hands. I haven't seen Thomas in 5 years. He died in a fire in Kansas. I identified the body myself. Then either you identified wrong or your brother's very much alive and very much a killer. Jake dismounted slowly, his legs unsteady. This can't be real. I have his signed confession, his signature, even a photograph. Eleanor pulled a worn picture from her pocket. Is this your brother? Jake looked at the image and felt his world shatter. It was Thomas, older, harder, but unmistakably his little brother. The one he'd failed to protect from their father's fists, the one who'd supposedly died trying to save children from a burning orphanage. Yeah, he whispered. That's him. Eleanor lowered her gun but didn't holster it. You really didn't know. I grieved him for 5 years. Jake's hands were shaking. I named my horse after him. I carry his watch. Jake, Eleanor's voice was softer than he'd heard it. I'm sorry. Does the confession say what he's done? You don't want to know. Tell me. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, then 17 murders that he admits to. Men, women, 2 children who witnessed their parents being killed. Jake turned away and vomited into the bushes. Eleanor waited patient until he was done. You can walk away, she said finally. The marriage protected you from Morrison's false charges. You don't owe me anything more. Jake wiped his mouth straightened. Yes, I do. Whatever Thomas has become, whatever he's done, I'm his brother. His sins are partly mine. I should have looked for him harder. Should have known. You can't blame yourself for his choices. But I can help you stop him. Jake met her eyes. If you'll have me. Eleanor studied him for a long moment, then holstered her gun. Partners. Partners. They shook hands, a business arrangement sealed, but when their hands touched, something electric passed between them. Eleanor pulled away quickly, busying herself with the horses. We should go. Morrison's trackers are good. Eleanor. Jake caught her arm gently. Thank you for telling me the truth. Don't thank me yet. We've got 7 days of hell ahead of us, and Morrison will kill us both before he lets us reach Fort Laramie. Then we'd better get moving, wife. She almost smiled. After you, husband. They rode out of the grove as the afternoon sun began its descent, 2 unlikely allies bound by paper lies and a shared enemy. Neither knew that Morrison's men were already on their trail, or that Thomas Mallister was waiting at Fort Laramie with plans of his own. But Eleanor was wrong about one thing. They didn't have 7 days of hell ahead of them. They had something much worse. They had 7 days of learning to trust each other, and in the wild frontier of 1882, trust was deadlier than any bullet. The sun was setting as they made camp in a box canyon Eleanor knew defensible and hidden. As Jake gathered firewood, he watched his strange new wife cleaning her rifle with the devotion of a nun at prayer. The firelight caught the scar on her face, turning it silver. Stop staring, she said without looking up. Wasn't staring? You were wondering how I got the scar. Actually, I was wondering how you learned to speak Lakota. She looked up surprised. Really? The scar's just skin. The language is the planning, the way you handle a gun. That's what makes you interesting. Eleanor was quiet for so long Jake thought she wouldn't answer. Then, my mother was half Lakota. She taught me before Morrison killed her. I'm sorry. Don't be. She died fighting. Put 3 bullets in Morrison's men before they got her. Eleanor's voice was proud. I was 17, hiding in the root cellar like a coward. Surviving isn't cowardice. It is if you don't do something with the life you saved. She finished with the rifle, set it aside. What about you? How does a Pinkerton end up a drifter? Jake froze. How did you— I'm not stupid, Jake. The way you move, the way you think tactically. Plus, I did my research on everyone Morrison tried to recruit. She pulled out a wanted poster. Jake's face stared back at him, though the name read Jacob Pierce. Wanted for destruction of railroad property and freeing prisoners in federal custody. $5,000 bounty. You could turn me in. I could. Eleanor fed the poster to the fire. But then who would help me get to Fort Laramie? That the only reason she met his eyes across the fire. For now. They ate in companionable silence jerky, hardtack, and coffee, strong enough to float a horseshoe. The moon rose full and bright, turning the canyon silver. We're being watched, Eleanor said quietly, not changing her relaxed posture. I know. 2 men ridged to the south. 3. There's one in the rocks to the west. Jake smiled slightly. Good ears. Good teacher. My mother could hear a mouse breathe at 50 yards. What do you want to do? Let them watch. They won't attack tonight. Morrison wants us alive so he can make us suffer. These are just scouts. Cheerful thought. I'm full of them. She stood stretched. I'll take first watch. We should share. You've been up since yesterday. Sleep while you can. She moved to a rock outcropping that gave a view of all approaches. Jake. Yeah. Your brother, when we find him. She paused. What will you do? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Whatever needs doing. Even if. He lay down using his saddle as a pillow. Eleanor. Yeah. This marriage thing, it's just business, right? Right. Good. Just wanted to be clear. Crystal. But as Jake drifted off to sleep, he heard Eleanor whisper something in Lakota. He didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable, a prayer for what he couldn't guess. On the ridge above, one of Morrison's scouts lowered his field glasses. They've bedded down for the night. Good, his partner replied. Morrison wants to know everything, what they eat, when they sleep, how they wait. You hear that? A coyote howled in the distance, then another, then a dozen. That's not coyotes, the first scout said, fear creeping into his voice. The arrow took him in the chest before he could say more. His partner had time to scream before a tomahawk ended his watch permanently. Chief Red Sky stepped from the shadows, his warriors materializing around him like ghosts. He looked down at the canyon where Eleanor kept watch and raised his hand in salute. She raised hers in return, though Jake couldn't see it from where he lay. Watch over her warriors, Red Sky said in Lakota. She is daughter of 2 worlds. She walks a hard path. What of the white man? One of his warriors asked. He is her choice. We honor it. Red Sky looked at the dead scouts. Take the bodies far from here. Let Morrison wonder what happened to his men. In the canyon below, Eleanor allowed herself a small smile. Morrison thought he had all the advantages, men, money, influence, but he'd forgotten one thing. The land itself remembered who its true children were. And tonight, the land was on her side. As the moon traveled across the sky, Jake slept fitfully, dreaming of his brother's face. In his dreams, Thomas was still 12 years old, crying after their father's latest beating, promising Jake he'd be good, he'd be better if only the pain would stop. I'm sorry, Jake mumbled in his sleep. I'm so sorry, Tommy. Eleanor heard him from her perch, saw the pain etched on his sleeping face. Without thinking, she began to sing softly in Lakota a lullaby her mother had sung when nightmares came calling. Her voice was rough from years of disuse, but the melody was true. Jake's breathing eased, his face relaxing. Eleanor stopped singing, embarrassed by her moment of softness. Don't stop, Jake said quietly, not opening his eyes. It's beautiful. You should be sleeping. Can't. Not with Tommy out there somewhere alive and killing for Morrison. Eleanor climbed down from her perch, settled beside him, not close enough to touch, but close enough for comfort. Tell me about him. Before. He was gentle, Jake said, eyes on the stars. Loved animals, reading, drawing. Used to sketch everything, birds, horses, people. He was good too. Could have been an artist if we'd had money for schooling. What happened? Our father happened. Mean drunk who thought fists were punctuation. I tried to protect Tommy, but I was working the railroad by the time I was 14. Wasn't home enough. Jake's voice was bitter. Last time I really saw him, he was 18. Said he was going to make something of himself. Make me proud. Sounds like he lost his way. Or Morrison showed him a different path. Jake turned to look at her. Tell me about the evidence. All of it. Eleanor hesitated, then pulled out a leather journal from her saddlebag. This was my father's. He documented everything, every land grab, every murder, every bribe, names, dates, amounts. Morrison's whole organization laid bare. Why didn't he take it to the authorities? He tried. The first federal marshal never made it out of town. The second was found dead 3 days later, supposedly killed by Indians. She traced the journal's worn cover. Father was gathering more evidence, trying to find someone Morrison couldn't buy or kill when they came for him. How did you survive? I wasn't supposed to, but Morrison's men started with my parents, gave me time to hide. I spent 3 days in that root cellar listening to them tear our house apart looking for this journal. Her voice was steady, but Jake saw her hands tremble. They finally gave up. Figured I'd died in the fire they set. But you didn't. No, I crawled out, buried what was left of my parents, and started planning. She looked at him. 3 years I've been working toward this moment. Learning to shoot, to fight, to survive, making connections with people Morrison had wronged, waiting for the right opportunity. And I'm that opportunity. You're unexpected, she admitted, but maybe that's what I needed, someone Morrison wouldn't see coming. He knows who I am, the Pinkerton who cost him Kansas. Eleanor sat up straighter. The Clearwater incident, that was you. You know about it. Everyone in the territory knows about it. 23 railroad barons tried for conspiracy and murder. Morrison lost millions when that land deal fell through. She stared at him. They say the Pinkerton who exposed it disappeared. Some said dead. Just disillusioned. The railroad hired me to investigate theft. I found murder conspiracy, and my own employers knee-deep in blood. Jake's laugh was bitter. They wanted me to bury it. I refused. Published everything in the newspapers instead. That's why there's a bounty on you. Among other reasons. He sat up facing her. Eleanor, if Morrison knows who I am, then he's probably planning something special for us both. She stood checking her rifle. Good thing we're planning something special for him first. A wolf howled in the distance. Then another. Those aren't wolves, Jake said. No? Eleanor smiled. They're not. The night exploded into chaos as riders burst from 3 directions at once. Jake rolled, came up with his gun ready, but Eleanor caught his arm. Wait! The riders weren't Morrison's men. They were Lakota warriors painted for war, and at their head rode Chief Red Sky himself. Little sister, he said in Lakota, which Jake was surprised to find he partially understood. The snake sends many men. They come with the dawn. How many? Eleanor replied in the same language. 20, maybe more. They have the one who tracks like a spirit, Samuel Crow. Eleanor's face went pale. Crow's with them. Who's Samuel Crow? Jake asked. Best tracker west of the Mississippi, part Cherokee, part nightmare. If he's on our trail, you cannot outrun him, Red Sky said, switching to English for Jake's benefit. But there is another way. He gestured, and his warriors brought forward 2 bodies, Morrison's scouts' arrows still protruding from their corpses. We make them think you are dead, Red Sky explained. Leave these bodies in your camp, burn everything, make it look like you were all killed in a raid. Morrison won't believe it, Eleanor said. He will if Crow believes it, and Crow will believe what he sees, 2 bodies, your belongings, signs of battle. Red Sky smiled. My warriors are very good at leaving the right signs. What about us? Jake asked. You come with us. We take you through the sacred paths, the old ways through the mountains. Morrison's men cannot follow where they do not know to look. Eleanor looked at Jake. It means trusting them completely. No towns, no supplies except what they provide. And if Morrison figures out the deception, he'll know exactly where we are, Jake finished. But it beats trying to outrun Crow in open country. Eleanor turned to Red Sky. Uncle, this debt grows too large. I cannot repay. Family owes no debts, Red Sky said firmly. Jake's head snapped toward Eleanor. Uncle, my mother's brother, Eleanor admitted. Not by blood, but by choice. He took her in when her own people cast her out for marrying a white man. You're full of surprises. You have no idea. She turned back to Red Sky. We accept, but Jake needs to know if we do this, there's no backing out. The sacred paths have rules. What kind of rules? Red Sky's expression was serious. You must be married in our way as well. The paths are for family only. Your paper marriage means nothing to the spirits." Jake and Eleanor looked at each other. "It's just ceremony," Eleanor said quickly. "Doesn't change our arrangement." "Right, just ceremony." But as Red Sky's warriors prepared the false massacre site and Eleanor gathered their essential supplies, Jake wondered if anything about this woman was just anything. The Lakota marriage ceremony was swift and practical, performed by Red Sky himself as the moon reached its zenith. Jake and Eleanor stood in a circle of warriors, hands bound together with a strip of hide, as Red Sky spoke words that seemed to come from the earth itself. "You are bound now in the eyes of the spirits," he said. "What was two is one, what was weak is strong, what was alone is together." "Until Fort Laramie," Eleanor added quietly. Red Sky smiled sadly. "The spirits do not recognize divorce, little sister." Before Eleanor could respond, one of the warriors signaled urgently. Torches were visible in the distance, Morrison's men coming fast. "Now!" Red Sky commanded. The false camp erupted in flames as warriors scattered in all directions, leaving clear tracks. Jake and Eleanor, still bound at the wrist, were lifted onto horses and surrounded by riders. "Do not look back," Red Sky warned. "The old paths require faith." As they rode into the darkness, Jake felt Eleanor's pulse through their bound hands, rapid as a bird's. Behind them, shouts indicated Morrison's men had found the burning camp. "Did we just fake our own deaths?" Jake asked. "Seems like it," Eleanor replied. "And we're now married according to Lakota law." "Seems like it. This is the strangest honeymoon in history." Eleanor laughed, surprising them both. "Wait until tomorrow. This is just the beginning." As they disappeared into hidden canyons known only to the Lakota, Samuel Crow stood over the burning remnants of the camp, studying the scene with eyes that missed nothing. He knelt, touched the earth, tasted the ash. "Well," Morrison demanded, arriving with the main force. "Two dead, man and woman from the size. Lakota attack very violent." Crow stood slowly. But what?" Crow walked to where the horses had been, studied the tracks, counted the hoof prints. His weathered face creased in a slight smile. "Clever," he murmured. "What's clever?" Morrison snapped. "Nothing, Mr. Morrison. They're dead. The Lakota killed them and took the bodies, probably for trophies." Morrison stared at the burning camp, his bandaged face twisted with rage. "I wanted them to suffer." "The Lakota have ways of making death last days." Crow lied smoothly. "Be content with that." As Morrison and his men argued about whether to pursue the Lakota, Crow walked to the edge of the camp. There, carved small in a rock where only someone looking would find it, was a symbol, a circle with two lines through it. The Lakota sign for ghost walking, someone pretending to be dead. Eleanor had left it for him, knowing he'd understand. Crow smiled fully now. The girl had learned well in the 3 years since he'd taught her tracking. Before Morrison had hired him. Before everything went to hell. He covered the symbol with dirt and walked back to Morrison. "Trail's cold, boss. They're gone." But in his heart, Samuel Crow made a decision. He'd track them, yes, but perhaps not as quickly as Morrison would like. Everyone deserved a fighting chance, even the daughter of the man he'd failed to save. The sacred paths of the Lakota were older than memory carved through mountain stone when the world was young. Jake Mallister had never believed in spirits until he rode through those ancient passages. Eleanor's warmth pressed against his back as they shared a horse, their wrists still bound by ceremony. "Stop squirming," Eleanor hissed as Jake shifted again, trying to ease the ache in his shoulders. "Stop hogging the saddle," he shot back. "Children," Red Sky called from ahead, amusement clear in his voice. "The spirits grow tired of your bickering." They'd been riding for 6 hours through passages so narrow that daylight barely touched them. The air tasted of centuries' dust and prayer, and something Jake couldn't name. Behind them, 20 Lakota warriors moved silent as shadows, while ahead the path twisted into darkness. "How much further?" Jake asked. "Until we arrive," Red Sky replied, which was the only answer he'd given for the last hour. Eleanor's stomach growled loudly. Jake felt her embarrassment in the way she stiffened against him. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked quietly. "Yesterday. Maybe. I forget sometimes, when I'm focused." Jake reached into his jacket, pulled out a piece of jerky. "Here. I can't take your food. Our food, remember? What was two is one according to your uncle." She took the jerky, ate it slowly. That ceremony doesn't mean anything. Sure it doesn't. It doesn't. I agreed with you. No, you're doing that thing with your voice. What thing? That amused thing, like you know something I don't. Before Jake could respond, Red Sky raised his hand. Everyone stopped. What is it? Eleanor whispered. The answer came in the form of an arrow that sprouted from the rock beside Jake's head. Ambush! Red Sky shouted, but it was in English, not Lakota. Morrison's men, they found us. The narrow passage erupted in chaos. Gunfire echoed off stone walls, deafening in the confined space. Jake threw himself and Eleanor off the horse, pulling her behind a boulder as bullets whined overhead. How? Eleanor gasped. How did they find the sacred paths? Worry about that later. Jake drew his Colt-counted muzzle flashes. 8 shooters, high ground both sides. 9, Eleanor corrected, already sighting down her rifle. There's one in that crevice to the left. She fired. A scream and a body tumbling confirmed her count. Show off, Jake muttered, then louder. Red Sky, you alive? For now. The chief's voice came from behind another rock. But we're pinned. Eleanor swore creatively in 3 languages. The strong box, it's still on the horse. Jake looked. Their horse had bolted forward, was now standing in the middle of the killing field sides, heaving with fear. Leave it, Jake said. That box is everything. Without it, my family died for nothing. Your family died because Morrison's a bastard. That box won't bring them back. Eleanor turned to him, and Jake saw something in her eyes that scared him more than the bullets. No, but it might save other families. She moved before he could stop her, rolling from cover and sprinting toward the horse. Jake cursed and followed, laying down covering fire. His Colt barked twice, 3 times, keeping shooters' heads down. Eleanor reached the horse, grabbed for the strongbox. A rifle cracked. She cried out, blood blooming on her shoulder, but didn't let go. Jake reached her, wrapped an arm around her waist, and hauled her in the box back toward cover. They almost made it. The bullet took Jake in the side, spinning him around. He went down hard, Eleanor and the strongbox tumbling with him. For a moment, the world went white with pain. Jake! Eleanor's face swam into focus above him. Jake, stay with me. Bossy, he managed. Even when I'm dying. You're not dying. I forbid it. Don't think it works that way. More gunfire. Red Sky's warriors were returning fire now, but they were outnumbered and outpositioned. This was going to be a slaughter unless... Give me your gun, Eleanor said. What, your gun? Give it to me. She was already checking her rifle. I'm going to do something stupid. That's my job. Not anymore. She looked at him, and her scarred face was fierce with determination. You saved me. Now I save you. That's how partnerships work. Before he could argue, she kissed him. Quick, hard tasting of blood and gunpowder. Then she was gone, moving not away from the shooters, but toward them up a near vertical rock face Jake wouldn't have attempted healthy. Crazy woman, he breathed, then louder. Red Sky, cover her. The Lakota warriors saw what Eleanor was doing and adjusted their fire, keeping the ambushers focused on them while she climbed. Jake watched her scale the rock like she was born to it, using handholds he couldn't even see. She reached the first shooter's position. Jake heard a brief struggle, then the man's scream as he fell. Eleanor had his rifle now, was moving to the next position. Behind you, Jake shouted. She spun, fired, kept moving. Another shooter down, then another. She was a force of nature, scarred face set in deadly concentration, moving through the ambushers like death itself. But there were too many. Jake saw the shooter. Eleanor didn't, the one drawing a bead on her back. Without thinking, Jake rolled to his knee, raised his Colt with a shaking hand, and fired. The gun clicked empty. The shooter's rifle cracked. Eleanor jerked, stumbled. For a heart-stopping moment, Jake thought she'd been hit. Then she turned Eleanor's stolen rifle, barking once, and the shooter toppled from his perch. That all of them? She called down. Think so, Red Sky replied, emerging from cover. Several of his warriors were wounded, but none dead. You fight like your mother, little sister. Mom never climbed rocks in a dress? Eleanor said, sliding back down. Her dress, the one she'd put on for their rushed wedding, was torn in a dozen places, showing bleeding scratches beneath. She knelt beside Jake, hands already probing his wound. Bullet went through. That's good. Bleeding's not too bad. Also good. Your bedside manner needs work. Shut up. But her hands were gentle as she pressed a cloth to his side. Can you ride? Do I have a choice? Not really. Red Sky approached, his face grim. This was not Morrison's men. Eleanor looked up sharply. What Morrison's men are thugs. These were professionals, military trained. He held up a rifle. Army issue, new model. The Army's trying to kill us, Jake groaned. Great, add them to the list. Not the Army, Eleanor said slowly, her face pale. Jake, what if your brother has friends in uniform? The implications hit Jake like cold water. Thomas working with corrupt military officers, the weapon smuggling mentioned in the mine, it all connected. We need to move, Red Sky said. More will come. They jury-rigged a travois for Jake, though he protested he could ride. Eleanor stayed beside him as they moved deeper into the sacred paths, her hand finding his when the pain got bad. That kiss, Jake said after an hour of silence. What was that? Motivation, Eleanor replied, not looking at him. For who? Shut up and heal. But he saw the color in her cheeks the way she kept touching her lips. 2 hours later, they emerged from the paths onto a plateau that overlooked the valley. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and crimson. In the distance, Fort Laramie was visible still 3 days away. We camp here tonight, Red Sky announced. Hidden defensible, and there's water. As his warriors set up camp, Eleanor helped Jake to a flat rock where she could properly treat his wound. Her fingers were steady as she cleaned and bandaged, but Jake noticed the tremor in her hands after. You okay? He asked. I killed 4 men today. To save us. Still killed them. She met his eyes. Does it get easier? No. And if it does, that's when you know you've lost yourself. She nodded, seemed to find comfort in that. Your brother. If he's got military connections, then Fort Laramie might not be safe. Jake tried to sit up, winced. We need a new plan. No, we stick to the plan. Eleanor pulled out the strongbox, used a key from around her neck to open it. Because I haven't been entirely honest with you. Inside, along with documents, was something wrapped in oilcloth. Eleanor unwrapped it carefully, revealing, Is that a telegraph cipher? Jake stared at the device. Military grade, stolen from Morrison's safe, along with this. She pulled out a leather journal. It's in code, but I've been working on it. Look at this. She opened to a page covered in her neat handwriting translations of the coded entries. Jake read, his blood going cold. Jesus Christ, they're planning to massacre the peace delegation. Not just massacre, blame it on the Lakota trigger a war use emergency powers to seize all tribal lands. Eleanor's voice was steady, but her eyes burned. Your brother isn't just working for Morrison, he's the architect of the whole plan. Jake closed his eyes. Tommy, his gentle little brother who used to draw birds, was planning genocide. There's more, Eleanor said quietly. The peace treaty signing. It's been moved up, 3 days from now. The day we're supposed to reach Fort Laramie. Yeah. She looked at him. Jake, I need to know. When we find your brother, I'll stop him. Jake opened his eyes, met hers. Whatever it takes. Even if. They sat in silence as darkness fell. The camp settled around them, warriors taking watch positions. Red Sky brought them food rabbit stew that tasted like heaven after days of jerky. You two don't act like a convenience marriage, he observed. It is, Eleanor said quickly. Of course, Red Sky smiled. That's why you kissed him before the fight, for convenience. Eleanor's face went red. That was tactical motivation. Is that what young people call it now? Red Sky walked away chuckling. I hate him sometimes, Eleanor muttered. He's not wrong, though, Jake said carefully. This thing between us is temporary. Eleanor stood abruptly. I should check the perimeter. She was gone before Jake could respond. He lay back, side-aching, and wondered when exactly he'd started hoping she was wrong about the temporary part. An hour later, Eleanor hadn't returned. Jake forced himself up, using his rifle as a crutch, and went looking. He found her at the edge of camp, sitting on a boulder, staring at the stars. Mom used to say each star was a spirit watching over us, she said without turning. I used to believe that. Before Morrison. Before I learned that spirits don't stop bullets. She looked at him. You shouldn't be walking. You shouldn't be alone. He sat beside her carefully. Talk to me. About what? Anything. Everything. Why you really saved me that first day. Eleanor was quiet so long Jake thought she wouldn't answer. Then, you reminded me of my father. The way you stood up to Morrison knowing you'd probably die. Dad was like that. Stubborn and noble and stupid. Thanks, I think. It's a compliment. She pulled her knees to her chest. I wasn't lying about needing help to get to Fort Laramie, but I could have found another way. The truth is, I'm tired of being alone. You have Red Sky, who I see maybe twice a year, and Dr. Chen and Maria, who have their own lives. She looked at him. For 3 years I've lived for revenge. Nothing else. No friends. No anything. Just planning and preparing and hating. And now I'm wondering what happens after. If we survive, if we stop Morrison and your brother, then what? What do I do when I don't have revenge to live for? Jake wanted to tell her she could live for herself, for happiness, maybe even for him. But the words stuck in his throat. You rebuild, he said instead. Find new purpose. Is that what you did after Kansas? Still working on it, she smiled slightly. Maybe we can figure it out together, after. I'd like that. They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders touching. Then Eleanor stiffened. You hear that? Jake listened. Nothing at first then. Horses. Lots of them. Riders coming, a warrior shouted. The camp exploded into motion. Warriors grabbed weapons, took positions. Red Sky appeared bow in hand. How many? Eleanor asked. 20, maybe 30. Red Sky notched an arrow. Coming fast. Morrison, has to be. Eleanor helped Jake to cover behind a large rock formation. Can you shoot? Give me a gun and find out. She pressed a loaded rifle into his hands. Don't die. Same to you. The riders came into view, torches blazing. At their head rode Bull Henderson, Morrison's enforcer, his massive frame unmistakable even in darkness. McAllister, Bull's voice boomed across the plateau. Morrison's got a message for you. Tell Morrison to go to hell, Jake shouted back. Oh, I've got something better than a message. Bull raised something in his hand. In the torchlight, Jake could see it was a photograph. Your brother says hello. Jake's blood went cold. Eleanor grabbed his arm as he started to rise. It's a trap, she hissed. I don't care. Bull laughed. Tommy Boy's got something he wants you to see. He held up another object, a scalp, long dark hair with gray streaks. Recognize this, belonged to that Chinese doctor. Friend of your wife's, wasn't he? Eleanor made a sound like a wounded animal. Chen. Still alive if you're wondering, Bull called. Tommy's got away with knives, makes it last. The girl Maria, she's next. Unless you come out, both of you, now. Don't, Red Sky warned. It's what they want. But Eleanor was already standing. They have our friends. Eleanor, no. She looked down at Jake and her eyes were already dead. I can't let them die for me, not again. Then we go together. You can barely stand. So I'll shoot sitting down. Jake forced himself up, leaning heavily on the rifle. Partners, remember? Something flickered in Eleanor's dead eyes. Maybe hope, maybe just recognition of shared damnation. Partners, she agreed. They walked out from cover together, Jake leaning on Eleanor, both with guns lowered but ready. Bull grinned, showing gold teeth. Smart choice. Tommy's going to be so happy to see you, Jake. Got all sorts of plans. Where? Eleanor asked. Old mining camp, Scorpion Gulch. You know it. Eleanor nodded tightly. We'll come, but only if you guarantee Chen and Maria's safety. You're not really in a position to negotiate, Scarface. Eleanor moved so fast even Jake didn't see it coming. Her knife was at Bull's throat before anyone could react, her other hand holding his gun hand immobile with surprising strength. Wrong, she said quietly. I'm in the perfect position. Your men shoot, you die first. I'm betting Morrison wouldn't like losing his best enforcer. Bull's eyes bulged. You crazy bitch! Eleanor pressed the knife harder, drawing blood. Guarantee their safety. Find Jesus, they live if you come peaceful. Good. Eleanor stepped back, but kept the knife visible. We'll need an hour to gather supplies. Half hour. 45 minutes and you wait here. We come to you. Bull rubbed his throat, looking at the blood on his hand. Tommy said you were dangerous. I'm starting to see why. As Morrison's men settled to wait, Jake and Eleanor returned to Red Sky. This is foolish, the chief said. This is necessary, Eleanor replied, gathering medical supplies. Chen saved my life more times than I can count. I won't let him die for me. It's a trap. Obviously. She looked at Red Sky. Uncle, I need you to do something for me. Anything. She pulled him aside, whispered urgently. Red Sky's face went through several expressions, surprise, concern, then grim determination. "You're sure?" he asked. "It's the only way." "What are you planning?" Jake demanded. Eleanor turned to him. "Trust me." "Eleanor, do you trust me or not?" Jake met her eyes, saw the pain there, the determination, the hint of something that might have been love. "Yes." "Then follow my lead, no matter what happens." She kissed him again, longer this time, tasting of tears he hadn't seen her shed. "For luck," she whispered against his lips. "I thought it was tactical motivation." "That too." They mounted horses, Jake barely managing with his wound, and rode to where Bull waited. Morrison's men surrounded them, immediately, guns drawn. "Weapons," Bull demanded. Eleanor handed over her rifle pistol, 2 knives. Jake gave up his Colt and rifle. Bull searched them, roughly finding Eleanor's boot knife and Jake's hidden derringer. "That all?" Bull asked. "That's all." Eleanor lied. Jake felt the weight of the small knife she'd slipped into his boot during their kiss. Tactical motivation indeed. "Good, let's ride. Tommy's waiting." As they rode into the darkness surrounded by enemies, Jake caught Eleanor's eye. She nodded slightly toward their back trail. Jake looked, saw nothing at first, then movement in the shadows, Red Sky's warriors following unseen. Whatever Eleanor had planned, they weren't going in alone. The journey to Scorpion Gulch took 3 hours through rough terrain. Jake's side screamed with every jostle, but he kept silent. Eleanor rode beside him, occasionally reaching over to steady him when the pain got bad. "Touching," Bull mocked. "The happy couple." "Happier than you'll ever be," Eleanor shot back. "What's wrong, Bull? No woman desperate enough to marry you." Bull's face darkened. "Keep talking, Scarface. Tommy gave us permission to hurt you, just not kill you." "Try it." "Eleanor, Jake warned. "Don't antagonize him." "Why not? We're probably going to die anyway." "That's the spirit," Bull laughed. "Though Tommy says he's got other plans for you, Mrs. McAllister. Says you're going to help him send a message." Jake's hands tightened on his reins. "If he touches her, you'll bleed on him." Bull spat tobacco juice. "Face it, McAllister, you're done. Both of you." Scorpion Gulch appeared like a wound in the landscape, abandoned buildings clinging to canyon walls, mine shafts yawning like mouths. Torches had been lit throughout, casting dancing shadows that made the place look like hell itself. And there, standing in the center of what had once been Main Street, was Thomas McAllister. Jake's breath caught. His little brother had grown tall, lean, with their father's cruel mouth and their mother's dark eyes. But where Tommy had once been gentle, this man radiated violence like heat. "Hello, Jake," Thomas said, his voice cultured, now educated. "Been a while?" "Tommy." Jake dismounted carefully, trying not to show weakness. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was. Thomas McAllister died in that fire in Kansas." He smiled, and it was winter cold. "I'm someone else now. A killer. A survivor. Just like you taught me." Thomas's gaze shifted to Eleanor. "And you must be the infamous Elellanar Thornwood. Or should I say Mrs. McAllister, welcome to the family." "Go to hell," Eleanor said. "Such language from my sister-in-law." Thomas walked closer, circling them like a wolf. "You know I've been studying you, Eleanor. 3 years of planning, of patience. Impressive. We're very much alike. We're nothing alike." "No." Thomas pulled out a journal, Eleanor's father's journal. "I've read this. Your father's notes, his investigation. Did you know he was close to figuring out my involvement another week, and he would have exposed me?" Eleanor went rigid. You killed him." "I gave the order. Morrison pulled the trigger, but yes, I killed your parents." Thomas's smile widened at Eleanor's expression. "What, you thought this was just about Morrison's greed? Oh, Eleanor, Morrison's just a tool. This has always been my operation." Jake stepped forward. "Tommy, why? Don't call me that." Thomas's composure cracked for a moment, showing rage beneath. Tommy was weak. Tommy let father beat him. Tommy cried and begged and accomplished nothing. You were a child. I was pathetic. Until I learned the truth, power isn't given, it's taken. Father taught me that with his fists. You taught me that when you left me alone with him. The words hit Jake like physical blows. I was working, trying to earn money to get us both out. You were running, just like you always ran. Thomas pulled out a gun, Jake's father's gun, Jake realized with sick certainty. But I don't blame you anymore, brother. You made me strong. By becoming a monster. By becoming what this frontier rewards. The strong survive, the weak perish. He gestured to the buildings around them. Bring them out. Doors opened. Dr. Chen was dragged out, barely conscious, covered in blood. Maria followed, bruised but defiant. Chen, Eleanor started forward. Bull grabbed her, held her back. Thomas said. We're not done talking. He walked to Chen, grabbed the old man's hair, forced his head up. Tell them what you told me, doctor. Chen's voice was weak but clear. I'm sorry, Eleanor. He threatened the children at the mission. I had to tell him. Tell her what? Eleanor demanded. Thomas smiled. About the baby, of course. The canyon went silent except for the wind. What baby? Jake asked, though his heart already knew. The one your wife's carrying. Thomas studied Eleanor's shocked face. Oh, you didn't know Dr. Chen figured it out days ago. The nausea you've been hiding, the fatigue, the way you've been unconsciously protecting your stomach during fights. Eleanor's hand went to her abdomen. That's not... I can't be. But you are. About 6 weeks along the good doctor estimates. Thomas's smile was predatory. Which raises interesting questions about timeline, doesn't it, Jake? Jake's mind raced. 6 weeks ago, Eleanor hadn't known him, which meant Morrison. Eleanor whispered, her face white. One of his men. I fought, but not hard enough, apparently, Thomas said cruelly. So here's the situation. Jake's married to a woman carrying another man's child, a rapist's child. How wonderfully sordid. Jake moved without thinking, lunging for his brother. Thomas sidestepped, pistol-whipped Jake across the temple. Jake went down hard, the world spinning. Still predictable, brother. Thomas stood over him. Still letting emotions rule you. Stop. Eleanor broke free from Bull, dropped beside Jake. Please, whatever you want, I'll do it. Just stop hurting people. What I want. Thomas knelt beside them. I want you to understand something, both of you. Love is weakness. Compassion is vulnerability. The only truth in this world is power. You're wrong, Jake managed through bloody lips. Am I? Then why are you on your knees while I'm standing? Thomas rose. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow you'll both watch as I execute the peace delegation at Fort Laramie. Then Eleanor will sign a confession stating she and the Lakota planned the massacre. Jake will be framed as the rogue Pinkerton who helped them. No one will believe that, Eleanor said. They will when they find your bodies at the scene along with the evidence I've prepared. Thomas pulled out a sheaf of forged documents. Letters between you and Red Sky planning the attack. Jake's Pinkerton reports showing his sympathy for the tribes. Even a suicide note confessing your guilt. You've thought of everything, Jake said bitterly. Not everything, Eleanor said quietly. You forgot one thing, Thomas. What's that? She smiled, and it was sharp as winter. You're assuming we came alone. The arrow took Thomas in the shoulder, spinning him around. War cries erupted from the canyon walls as Red Sky's warriors descended like ghosts. Now, Eleanor shouted. Jake rolled, pulled the hidden knife from his boot, and slashed Bull's Achilles tendon. The big man went down screaming. Eleanor grabbed his gunshot, two of Morrison's men, before they could react. The canyon exploded into chaos. Gunfire, arrows, screams. Thomas struggled to his feet, the arrow still in his shoulder, shouting orders. Kill them! Kill them all! But Morrison's thugs weren't prepared for Lakota warriors in close combat. The fight was brutal, but brief. In minutes, most of Morrison's men were down or fleeing. Thomas backed toward a building, gun raised toward Eleanor. You clever bitch. You planned this. Just like you taught me. Eleanor said, her stolen gun steady. The strong survive. You won't shoot me, not carrying a child. Morrison's man's child. Why would I want it? But Jake saw her hand tremble, saw the lie in her eyes. Whatever else, Eleanor would never harm an innocent. Thomas saw it too. His smile returned. Weak, just like I expected. He swung his gun toward Jake. 3 shots rang out simultaneously. Thomas jerked, looked down at the spreading red on his chest. Both Jake and Eleanor had fired their bullets, finding their mark. But the third shot, Samuel Crow, stepped from the shadows, smoking rifle in hand. Sorry I'm late to the party. Thomas fell to his knees, blood frothing on his lips. Crow, you work for me. I work for Justice, boy, always have. Crow moved to stand beside Eleanor. Your father was a good man, Eleanor. Figured you should know I've been watching out for you best I could. You? Eleanor stared at him. You taught me tracking 3 years ago. Your daddy asked me to before he died. Said if anything happened to him, make sure you could survive. Crow looked at Thomas dying in the dirt. Seems you learned well. Jake crawled to his brother, cradled Thomas's head. Tommy. Still weak, Thomas whispered. Still trying to save me. You're my brother. Was your brother. Thomas's eyes found Jake's. The fire in Kansas, I said it. What killed those children to fake my death? They were witnesses. Jake's hands shook. Why tell me? Because I want you to know what you failed to prevent. Thomas coughed blood. You could have stopped Father, could have saved me, didn't. I was a child too. No excuses. We all choose who we become. Thomas's gaze shifted to Eleanor. The baby. Keep it. Why do you care? Eleanor asked coldly. I don't, but Jake will, and watching him raise another man's child, good revenge from beyond. Thomas died with a smile on his lips. Jake closed his brother's eyes, then stood slowly, painfully. The canyon was quiet now, except for the moans of the wounded. It's done, Red Sky said, appearing with his warriors. Morrison's men are scattered or dead. Morrison himself wasn't here, Eleanor observed. No, he's still in Deadwood, according to Crow. The tracker spat tobacco. Probably thinks his boys have you handled. Then we still have a chance to stop the massacre. Eleanor moved to Dr. Chen, helped him stand. Can you ride? I'll manage, the old man said. Eleanor, about the baby. Later, Sa, she said firmly. We deal with Morrison first. Jake hadn't spoken since Thomas died. Eleanor touched his arm gently. Jake? He was right. I failed him. You were a child trying to survive an impossible situation. Her voice was soft but firm. His choices were his own. The children in Kansas. He killed children. And that's on him, not you. She turned him to face her. Jake, I need you here. Present. We still have to stop the massacre. Jake looked at her, this fierce, scarred, pregnant woman who'd become his unlikely salvation. The baby. What will you... I don't know, but that's tomorrow's problem. She smiled slightly. Today we save the world. Or at least, our little part of it. Red Sky approached. The sun rises in 3 hours. Fort Laramie is 5 hours' ride. Then we'd better get moving. Eleanor looked around at their ragtag group wounded warriors. A tortured doctor. A young Mexican woman with fire in her eyes. A tracker with divided loyalties and her damaged husband. Not exactly an army. It's enough, Jake said, finding his voice again. It has to be. As they prepared to ride, Crow pulled Eleanor aside. Your daddy'd be proud, he said quietly. You became the woman he hoped you'd be. A killer, a protector. There's a difference. Crow handed her something, her father's sheriff star, tarnished but whole. Found this in Thomas's belongings. Thought you should have it. Eleanor stared at the star tears she wouldn't shed, burning her eyes. He wasn't even sheriff when he died. Morrison had already forced him out. Maybe, but he never stopped being a lawman at heart, neither of you. Crow walked away. 5 hours to Fort Laramie. Better ride hard. Eleanor pinned the star inside her jacket over her heart. Jake saw her do it, said nothing, just offered his hand. She took it. They rode out of Scorpion Gulch as the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky. Behind them, Thomas Mallister's body lay in the dust, his grand plans dying with him. But Morrison was still out there. The peace delegation was still in danger, and Eleanor was carrying a child whose very existence complicated everything. Whatever happens, Jake said as they rode, we face it together. Together. Eleanor agreed, then added with dark humor, at least until Fort Laramie. We'll see about that. She looked at him, saw something in his eyes that made her heart race. Jake Mallister, are you saying you want to stay married to me? I'm saying let's survive the next 5 hours first, then we'll negotiate. Romantic? Practical. Same thing sometimes. They spurred their horses faster. Racing the sunrise, racing death, racing toward a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of hundreds. As the sun painted the sky crimson blood red, Eleanor thought with grim poetry she felt the tiny flutter in her belly that might have been the baby or might have been fear. Either way, she was done running, done hiding, done being alone. She had a partner now, a husband, even if just on paper, and together they were going to end Clay Morrison's reign of terror once and for all, or die trying. But as the fort appeared in the distance, Eleanor saw something that made her blood run cold. Smoke. Black smoke rising from multiple buildings. "We're too late," someone said. "No," Jake said firmly, spurring his horse harder. "We're exactly on time." Because the smoke wasn't from destruction, it was from preparation. Morrison had arrived early, setting his stage for massacre, which meant the peace delegation was still alive, for now. The smoke rising from Fort Laramie wasn't from fire, it was from breakfast. 500 soldiers, 30 tribal delegates, and one peace treaty that would either save or damn them all. Jake Mallister pulled his horse to a stop on the ridge overlooking the fort, his sides screaming from the hard ride. Beside him, Eleanor sat rigid in her saddle field glasses pressed to her eyes. "Morrison's already there, she said. "I count 12 of his men near the main gate." "Playing soldier?" Jake asked. "Worse, they're wearing army uniforms." She lowered the glasses. "He's got them embedded as troops." Red Sky rode up beside them, his warriors spread along the ridge like ghosts. "The Peace Council begins at noon, 3 hours. "Not enough time to warn them properly," Samuel Crow said, spitting tobacco. "Ride in shouting about massacre, they'll think you're crazy, or worse, trying to sabotage the treaty yourself." Eleanor turned to Dr. Chen, who Maria was helping stay upright on his horse. The old man's face was gray with pain, but his eyes were sharp. "The military hospital," Chen said weakly. "I have friends there. Could get us inside without questions." "You need treatment yourself," Eleanor said. "After. Morrison first, healing later." Jake studied the fort's layout, his Pinkerton training kicking in. We split up, Chen and Maria through the hospital. Red Sky's warriors created distraction at the south wall. Eleanor and I through the main gate. "That's suicide, huh?" Crow said. "Morrison will recognize you instantly." "Good." Jake's smile was cold. "Let him. While he's focused on us, you get to General Hammond. Show him the evidence." "Hammond might be in Morrison's pocket," Eleanor warned. "Then we go to the tribal leaders directly. Chief Standing Bear knows me," Red Sky said. "He'll listen." Eleanor pulled out the strongbox, handed Crow the documents. "Everything's here. Thomas's confession, the forged papers, proof of the land fraud. Don't let Morrison get his hands on it." "What about you two?" Crow asked. Jake and Eleanor exchanged looks. "We're the bait," Eleanor said simply. Before anyone could protest, she spurred her horse down the slope toward the fort. Jake cursed and followed, hearing Red Sky's exasperated mutter behind them. Crazy white people. The fort's gates loomed before them, guards already raising rifles. Eleanor didn't slow. "State your business," a sergeant called. "Eleanor Mallister here to see my husband's brother about a family matter," she called back, not slowing. The guards looked confused, which was exactly what she wanted. They rode through the gates before anyone could stop them, hooves clattering on packed earth. "There," Jake pointed. Morrison stood near the headquarters building, dressed in an expensive suit, talking to General Hammond. His face went purple when he saw them. "You're supposed to be dead," he snarled. "Disappointed?" Eleanor dismounted smoothly despite everything. "Your boys always were incompetent, Clay." Morrison's hand went to his gun, then remembered where he was. Too many witnesses. "General, these people are wanted criminals. Arrest them." Hammond, a tired-looking man with graying whiskers, frowned. "On what charges?" "Horse theft, murder, conspiracy with hostiles." "Interesting accusations," Jake said, dismounting carefully. His wound had reopened, blood seeping through his shirt. "Especially from a man who's been selling weapons to rogue military units." Morrison's face went white. "You can't prove." "Thomas told us everything before he died." Eleanor's voice carried across the suddenly quiet parade ground. Soldiers were gathering, sensing drama. "Your whole plan, the fake massacre blaming the tribe stealing their land." "The woman's hysterical," Morrison told Hammond. "She's been through trauma." "Have I?" Eleanor pulled out her father's sheriff's star, pinned it to her dress. "General Hammond, I'm making a citizen's arrest of Clay Morrison for murder, conspiracy, and treason." The crowd murmured. Hammond's hand went to his sidearm. "Ma'am, you have no authority. She does if I deputize her." Everyone turned. A man stepped from the crowd, tall, weathered, wearing a U.S. Marshal's badge. "Marshal Jim Brennan," he said. "Been tracking Morrison for 6 months. This woman just saved me considerable trouble." Morrison backed up. "You're making a mistake. Only mistake was not coming sooner." Brennan looked at Eleanor. "Your father wrote me, Mrs. McAllister, told me what Morrison was planning. I've been gathering evidence, but you've got the missing pieces." "It's with Samuel Crow," Jake said. "He'll be here soon." "No need." Crow emerged from the crowd, strongbox in hand, already delivered to the General Marshal, along with some very interesting reading about Morrison's plans for today. Morrison pulled his gun. "You're all dead." His signal hidden among the soldiers, his 12 men revealed themselves, weapons drawn, but they weren't the only ones. "Now!" Red Sky shouted. His warriors materialized from hidden positions, arrows knocked. The fort erupted in chaos, soldiers unsure who to aim at, delegates scrambling for cover, women and children screaming. "Nobody move!" Hammond bellowed, but his voice was lost in the noise. Morrison grabbed Eleanor's gun to her head. "Everyone back off, or the woman dies." "Clay," Eleanor said calmly, "you really should have checked me for weapons." The knife she'd hidden in her sleeve, the one Jake had slipped her during their last kiss, slid into Morrison's thigh. He screamed, loosening his grip. Eleanor twisted, grabbed his gun hand, and they struggled. Jake started toward them, but Bull Henderson intercepted him, massive fist swinging. Jake ducked his wound, tearing wider, and drove his fist into Bull's solar plexus. The big man doubled over, and Jake brought his knee up into Bull's face. Bone crunched. "That's for calling my wife Scarface," Jake gasped. Around them, the fight was spreading. Red Sky's warriors battled Morrison's hidden men while soldiers tried to restore order. In the middle of it all, Eleanor and Morrison still struggled for the gun. The weapon fired. Everything stopped. Eleanor stood frozen, looking down at the spreading red on her dress. Then she smiled. "Missed," she said, and headbutted Morrison so hard Jake heard the crack from 20 feet away. Morrison staggered back, nose fountaining blood. The shot had gone wide, only grazing Eleanor's arm. "You bitch! You goddamn—" Chief Standing Bear's voice cut through the chaos like thunder. The elderly Lakota leader stood on the headquarters steps, his presence commanding instant attention. "Enough blood. Enough lies." He pointed at Morrison. "This man came to me yesterday, offered gold to attack the fort during the signing, said it would help my people reclaim our lands." Gasps from the crowd. Morrison's face went white. "I refused," Standing Bear continued, "but I wondered who would make such an offer. Now I know." He looked at General Hammond. "This is the snake in your nest, General. Remove him." "You can't believe these savages," Morrison started. Standing Bear moved faster than a man his age should be able to. His knife was at Morrison's throat before anyone could blink. "Call me savage once more," the chief said quietly. "Please." Morrison shut up. "Arrest him," Hammond ordered. Soldiers moved forward, but Morrison wasn't done. "You think you've won?" He laughed, blood running from his broken nose. "You have no idea what's coming. Thomas was just the beginning. There are others powerful men who want this land. They'll destroy you all." Maybe, Eleanor said, walking to stand beside Jake, "but you won't be around to see it." As soldiers dragged Morrison away, he locked eyes with Eleanor one last time. "That baby you're carrying," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's from one of my men. Shame you'll have to live with that reminder." The crowd went silent. Jake felt Eleanor stiffen beside him. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "You think that matters? You think rape defines me?" She stepped forward, and Morrison actually flinched. "I'm stronger than anything you or your men could do to me. This child will be raised knowing that. They'll know their mother survived, thrived, won." She turned to Jake. "And they'll know their father, their real father, chose them. Chose us." Jake's throat tightened. Without hesitation, he took her hand. "Damn right they will." The crowd murmured approval. Even hardened soldiers smiled. Morrison's final weapon shame had failed. Marshal Brennan stepped forward. "Mr. Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and treason. You'll hang, but first, you'll tell us everything. Every name, every plan, every hidden document." "I'll die first." "That can be arranged," Red Sky said mildly. They dragged Morrison away, his curses fading into the distance. The crisis was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. General Hammond approached Jake and Eleanor. I owe you both an apology, and a debt. If Morrison's plan had succeeded, a lot of innocent people would have died, Eleanor finished, just like my parents. Your father was a good man, Mrs. McAllister. I should have listened to him. Hammond pulled out a document. This is a full pardon for any crimes Morrison accused you of. And this? He handed Jake another paper. Reinstatement to the Pinkertons if you want it. Full back pay and commendation. Jake looked at the paper, then at Eleanor. Thanks, General. But I've got other plans. Oh, someone needs to be sheriff of Deadwood Junction, clean up Morrison's mess. Jake smiled at Eleanor. Figured my wife and I could handle it together. Eleanor stared at him. Jake, unless you've got other plans, after Fort Laramie and all. You want to stay married even with, she touched her stomach, especially with. Jake pulled her close, not caring about the audience. Eleanor, I fell in love with you somewhere between you shooting at Morrison's men and kissing me before a suicide climb. The baby's just part of the package. Romantic fool, she whispered, but she was crying. Practical decision, he countered. You're the strongest woman I know. Be stupid to let you go. The ceremony, she said. Red Sky said the spirits don't recognize divorce. Good thing I don't want one. She kissed him, then proper and thorough, while soldiers and warriors cheered. When they broke apart, Dr. Chen was there supported by Maria. Hate to interrupt, the old man said, but Jake's bleeding rather badly and Eleanor needs that arm looked at. As Chen led them toward the hospital, Red Sky appeared at Eleanor's side. Your mother would be proud, little sister. Think so. Know so. He smiled. She always said you'd find a man strong enough to match you. Just took longer than expected. He's still an idiot sometimes. All men are. It's part of our charm. Eleanor laughed, then winced as Chen began cleaning her wound. The baby, she asked quietly. Is it? Fine, Chen assured her. Strong like its mother. And father, Jake added, taking her hand. That evening, as the peace treaty was successfully signed, Jake and Eleanor stood on the fort's wall watching the sunset. So what now? Eleanor asked. Now we go home, clean up Deadwood, raise a family. Jake pulled her close. Maybe have a few more kids, ones we make together. Already planning our future. Someone has to. You're terrible at thinking beyond revenge. Was terrible, she corrected. Now I've got other things to think about. Like how to explain to our children that their parents met during a gunfight and got married to avoid hanging. We'll tell them the truth, Jake said. That sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. Philosophy now. Wisdom. There's a difference. They stood in comfortable silence watching the sun paint the sky crimson. In the distance, Deadwood Junction waited corrupted, broken, but not beyond saving. You know Morrison was right about one thing, Eleanor said. There are others, men like him who'll try to take what isn't theirs. Then we'll stop them. Simple as that. Simple as that. Jake turned her to face him. Eleanor, we just stopped a massacre, exposed a conspiracy, and took down the most powerful man in the territory. I think we can handle whatever comes next. Together. Together. Below them, Samuel Crow approached. Hate to interrupt, but thought you should know. Morrison's talking. Names, dates, everything. This goes all the way to Washington. Let Marshal Brennan handle Washington, Eleanor said. We've got a town to save. About that, Crow said. I've been thinking, Deadwood needs more than a sheriff, needs good people, builders, not destroyers. Your point. My point is, I'm tired of tracking for money. Your father once offered me a deputy position. Offers still stand. Eleanor looked at Jake, who nodded. Welcome to the Team Crow. Team. Maria appeared supporting Chen. We are a team now. If you want, Eleanor said, Deadwood needs a doctor and, she looked at Maria, someone who can shoot straight and isn't afraid of hard work. I can do more than shoot, Maria said proudly. I can teach. The children in Deadwood, they need education. A sheriff, a deputy, a doctor, and a teacher. Jake laughed. We're building a regular civilization. Someone has to, Eleanor said. As night fell over Fort Laramie, their small group stood together planning a future none of them had expected. The fight with Morrison was over, but the real work building something better from the ashes was just beginning. 3 days later, they rode back into Deadwood Junction as heroes. The news had already spread. Morrison's empire had collapsed, his men fled or arrested, his stolen lands returned to their rightful owners. The townspeople lined the streets, some cheering, others just staring in shock. The woman they'd called unwanted had saved them all. "Mrs. McAllister." A young woman ran up, tears streaming. "My husband Morrison was going to hang him for refusing to sell our farm, but he's free now, because of you." Eleanor dismounted carefully, still healing. "Because of all of us. No one person did this. But you started it. You gave us hope when we had none." More people gathered, sharing similar stories. Morrison's victims finally free to speak. Jake watched Eleanor accept their thanks with grace she didn't know she possessed. This scarred, fierce woman who'd lived for revenge was learning to live for something else: community, family, future. "Sheriff McAllister." An elderly man approached Jake. "That's what they're calling you. Morrison's old office is yours if you want it." Jake looked at the sheriff's office, then at Eleanor. "What do you think? Wife want to be married to the law? Better than being married to an outlaw," she said, though that had its moments too. They moved into the sheriff's office that afternoon, or rather the apartment above it. 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a view of the whole town. "It's not much," Jake said. "It's home." Eleanor corrected, then winced. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just the baby, moving around." She took his hand, placed it on her stomach. "Feel." Jake felt the flutter of movement, and his eyes widened. "That's our child," Eleanor said firmly. "No matter how they came to be, they're ours." "Ours," Jake agreed, pulling her close. A knock interrupted them. Crow stood in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt the domestic bliss, but we've got a problem." "Already?" "Some of Morrison's men, they're holed up at the Broken Wheel Saloon, drunk, armed, and talking about revenge." Eleanor reached for her gun, but Jake stopped her. "You're healing and pregnant. Let Crow and me handle this." "Like hell." "Eleanor," his voice was firm. "Partners trust each other. Trust me to handle this." She wanted to argue, Jake could see it, but finally she nodded. "Fine, but if you're not back in an hour, I'm coming after you." "Deal." As Jake and Crow headed to the saloon, Eleanor watched from the window. Her hand went to her stomach, to the life growing there. "Your daddy's an idiot," she told the baby. "But he's our idiot." The confrontation at the Broken Wheel was brief. Morrison's men, leaderless and demoralized, surrendered without much fight. The town was finally truly free. That night, as Jake and Eleanor lay in their new bed in their new home, she asked, "Do you ever regret it? The way things happened?" "Which part?" "Any of it. All of it." Jake was quiet for a moment. "I regret not saving Thomas, not being able to stop him from becoming what he was. That wasn't your fault." "I know, but I still regret it." He pulled her closer. "Everything else, no regrets. Every choice led me here to you. Even the fake marriage that became real. Especially that." He kissed her forehead. "Eleanor McAllister, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Even with all my scars. Because of them, they show you survived, that you're strong enough to survive anything." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I love you, Jake McAllister." "I love you too, Eleanor." Scars, baby, revenge plots and all. We're really doing this, building a life together. We really are. Outside Deadwood Junction slept peacefully for the first time in years. No Morrison, no fear, just a town beginning to heal. And above the sheriff's office, 2 unlikely souls who'd found each other through violence and loss began planning a future built on hope. The baby kicked as if in approval. "Active little thing," Jake murmured. "Takes after their mother." "God help us." Eleanor laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Jake had ever heard. Not because it was melodious, it wasn't, but because it was genuine, free of the pain and anger that had defined her for so long. They'd started as strangers thrown together by desperation, became partners through necessity, fell in love despite themselves. And now, as the moon rose over the frontier town they'd sworn to protect, they were family. It wasn't the ending either of them had planned. It was better. But endings, Jake would learn, were really just beginnings in disguise. Because 3 months later, Eleanor would give birth to twins, a boy and a girl strong and healthy despite everything. The boy they'd named David after Eleanor's father. The girl Hope for what she represented. And when Morrison's powerful friends came calling seeking revenge, they'd find not just a sheriff and his wife, but an entire town ready to fight for the family that had saved them. But that's a story for another day. For now, Jake and Eleanor McAllister slept peacefully, two souls no longer alone, no longer defined by their past, but by the future they'd build together. The unlikely cowboy and his unwanted bride had become something neither expected each other's salvation. And in the wild frontier of 1882, salvation was worth more than all the gold in the Black Hills. The next morning brought new challenges, as mornings always did in Deadwood. But now they faced them together, and that made all the difference. "Ready for another day, Sheriff?" Eleanor asked, strapping on her gun. "With you, always." They walked out into the sunrise, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next, because whatever it was, they'd face it together. And in the end, that's all that mattered. The twins came during a blizzard that buried Deadwood Junction under 6 feet of snow. "Push!" Dr. Chen commanded, his hand steady despite his age. Eleanor McAllister gripped Jake's hand hard enough to break bones, her scarred face twisted in determination. "I'm pushing you, ancient bastard. Push harder. Jake, I'm gonna kill him when this is over." "Get in line," Jake said, wincing as she squeezed harder. "Pretty sure you're crushing every bone in my hand. Good you did this to me." Actually, technically, Morrison's man. Eleanor's glare could have melted steel. "Do you want to die today, husband?" "No, ma'am." The first baby's cry pierced the air, strong, angry, alive. "A boy," Chen announced, "healthy and loud." Before Eleanor could catch her breath, the contractions hit again. "There's another one coming." Chen's eyes widened. "Twins! Twins!" Jake went pale. "But we're not prepared for—" "Shut up and hold my hand," Eleanor roared. 20 minutes later, a second cry joined the first, softer but no less determined. "A girl," Chen said, placing the baby on Eleanor's chest alongside her brother. "You have a son and a daughter." Eleanor looked down at the two tiny faces, tears streaming down her scarred cheek. "They're perfect." "They're ours," Jake whispered, touching each tiny head with reverence. "David and Hope," Eleanor said. "Those are their names. After your father and after what she represents, hope for something better." The moment of peace shattered as the door burst open. Samuel Crow stood there, snow-covered and grim. "We've got trouble." "Now," Jake demanded. "My wife just gave birth. Morrison's friends from Washington, they're here. 30 men military trained, and they've taken over the Broken Wheel Saloon." Crow's weathered face was tight with worry. "They're demanding you hand over Morrison's hidden fortune." "What fortune?" Eleanor asked, still cradling the newborns. "The one Thomas apparently stashed somewhere before he died. Gold bonds enough to buy half the territory." Jake stood slowly. "How long do we have?" "They gave us until sunrise, 6 hours." Eleanor tried to sit up, winced. "Get my gun." "You just gave birth to twins," Jake protested, "and now I need to protect them." Her green eyes blazed with maternal fury. "Nobody threatens my children." Chen pressed her back down. "You hemorrhaged during delivery. You move, now you die." "Then bring them here," Eleanor said. "Let them see what they're threatening." "That's insane," Jake said. "No, it's smart." Eleanor's mind was already working despite the exhaustion. Men like that, they expect weakness after childbirth. They won't expect— A rifle shot shattered the window. Jake threw himself over Eleanor and the babies as glass rained down. More shots followed, peppered the walls. "Warning shots?" Someone called from outside. "Next ones won't miss. Send out McAllister." Jake peered through the broken window. The street was full of armed men, all wearing long coats that couldn't quite hide military bearing. "Which one?" Jake called back. "There's 2 of us." "The woman. She knows where Thomas hid the fortune." Eleanor laughed, dark and bitter. "Of course, it's always about the money." "What do we do?" Maria asked from the doorway, rifle in hand. "We give them what they want," Eleanor said. Everyone stared at her. "You know where the fortune is?" Jake asked. "No, but Thomas told me something before he died, something I didn't understand until now." Eleanor shifted, painfully handed Hope to Jake while keeping David close. "He said the truth is in the beginning. I thought he meant something philosophical." But Thomas was never philosophical. He He was talking about a place, beginning Colorado, ghost town about 20 miles north. That's where the fortune is. That's where something is, and these men won't leave until they get it. Crow shook his head. You can't travel, neither can the babies. I'm not leaving them, Eleanor's voice was steel, but I can negotiate. Eleanor? Jake, trust me. Get their leader up here. Let me talk to him. Jake didn't like it, but he'd learned to trust Eleanor's instincts. He went to the window. Send your leader up. My wife will speak with him unarmed. 5 minutes later, footsteps on the stairs. Jake opened the door, gun drawn to reveal a man who looked like death dressed in expensive clothes. Tall, skeletal, with eyes like a snake. Mrs. McAllister, I'm Colonel Marcus Webb, retired. His gaze took in the scene, Eleanor in bed, newborn's blood-stained sheets. Inconvenient timing. Your timing, not mine, Eleanor said. What do you want? Thomas McAllister's fortune, 20 million in gold and bonds stolen from various sources over 5 years. 20 million. Jake couldn't hide his shock. Your brother was efficient, Webb said. He skimmed from Morrison, from the army, from everyone. We want it back. And if we don't have it, Webb smiled, it was worse than a threat. Your town burns. Everyone dies, starting with those babies. David chose that moment to cry. Eleanor soothed him automatically, but her eyes never left Webb's face. You'd kill newborns. I've killed children before, Mrs. McAllister. These would hardly be the first. The room went cold. Even Crow, who'd seen everything, looked disgusted. You're a monster, Maria spat. I'm a practical man. Webb pulled out a map. Thomas marked this before he died, beginning Colorado. The fortune's there, but we need someone who knew Thomas to find exactly where. And you think that's me? You're the one he confessed to, the one he told his secrets. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying the map. I'll need to see the place. Thomas left clues only I would understand. You can barely stand. Then you'll have to wait until I can. Eleanor's smile was sharp. Unless you want to torture the location out of a woman who just gave birth. I'm sure that'll look good when Marshal Brennan investigates why an entire town was massacred. Webb's eyes narrowed. Brennan's 3 days away. 2. I sent a telegram yesterday about suspicious strangers in town. Eleanor shifted hope to her other arm. He's probably riding hard right now. It was a lie, but Webb couldn't know that. The telegraph lines had been cut by the blizzard. You have 12 hours, Webb said finally. Then we ride to beginning. You'll come with us. I just gave birth. 12 hours. Webb stood. Oh, and Mrs. McAllister, if you're lying, if this is some trick, I'll make you watch while I kill everyone you love, starting with the babies, ending with your husband. He left. The room stayed silent until his footsteps faded. We need a plan, Jake said. I have one. Eleanor looked at Chen. How soon can I ride? You can't. You could bleed to death. How soon? Chen sighed. With the right medicines binding the wounds properly, maybe 8 hours, but Eleanor... Do it. She turned to Jake. You need to ride ahead to beginning. Scout it out. I'm not leaving you and the babies. You're not. You're protecting us by being prepared. She gripped his hand. Jake, I need you to trust me. Thomas did hide something in beginning, I'm sure of it. We need to know what before Webb gets there. How can you be sure? Because beginning is where Thomas and I first met, 3 years ago before he died. He was surveying the ghost town from Morrison, and I was tracking deer. We talked for hours. Her voice went soft. He was different then. Darker than you described, but not yet monstrous. You never told me. I didn't know it was your brother until I saw the photograph. He used a different name. Eleanor touched Jake's face. He talked about you. Said he had a brother who was a hero who always tried to do right. Some hero, I couldn't save him. No, but you saved me. She kissed him gently. Now go save our town. Jake didn't want to leave, but Eleanor was right. They needed information. Crow, you're with me. Jake said. Maria, protect my family. With my life. Maria promised, checking her rifle. As Jake prepared to leave, Eleanor caught his arm. Jake, if something happens, nothing will happen. If it does, promise me you'll take the babies and run. Don't try to avenge me, just protect them. Eleanor, promise me. Jake kissed her hard. I promise. But it won't come to that. He left before she could see the lie in his eyes. If Webb hurt Eleanor or the babies, Jake would paint the territory red with blood. The ride to beginning was brutal. The blizzard had passed but left snowdrifts that came up to the horses' chests. Jake and Crow made slow progress, both men silent with worry. She's stronger than she looks, Crow said finally. I know. Those babies, they'll be fighters, with parents like you two. If they survive the next day, Crow spat tobacco. They will. Eleanor's too mean to die and you're too stubborn. Beginning appeared like a wound in the white landscape. Empty buildings, broken windows, shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Cheerful place, Crow muttered. They searched systematically. The saloon, the hotel, the collapsed mineshaft. Nothing. Then Jake saw it, the old church-only building still intact, and carved into the door so small he almost missed it. TM+E. Thomas Mallister and Elellanar Thornwood. He carved their initials. Jake said something twisting in his chest. Inside the church under the altar they found it. Not gold or bonds, but something worse, detailed plans for a new conspiracy. Names of senators, generals, railroad barons. Plans to trigger a war with Mexico using fabricated border incidents. Thomas hadn't been working alone. He'd been part of something massive. Jesus, Crow breathed. This is bigger than Morrison ever was. And Webb's part of it. Jake studied the documents. Look, his name's all over these. So why does he need Eleanor? Jake found the answer in Thomas's journal, hidden with the plans. The final entry made his blood run cold. Elellanar Thornwood is the key. I've hidden the real fortune where only she would look, where her mother's people would hide sacred things. The Lakota burial grounds near Beginning. She's the only white person who knows their location. If something happens to me, she's the only one who can find it. I should kill her, but I can't. She reminds me of who I used to be. Before the darkness. Before I became father. He cared for her, Jake said quietly. A lot of good that does us now. Crow looked out the window. Riders coming? 6, maybe 7. Not Webb. These were different. Jake recognized the lead rider's massive frame. Bull Henderson. But he was arrested. Webb must have freed him. Crow raised his rifle. They're checking the buildings. They'll be here in minutes. We can't fight them all. No, but we can make them think the fortune's not here. Jake grabbed the lamp oil from the altar. Help me, we're burning it down. The evidence. I've got what we need. Jake stuffed key documents inside his coat. The rest burns. They worked fast, spreading oil, setting fires. The old wood caught quickly, flames racing up the walls. Bull's group saw the smoke, came running. Jake and Crow slipped out the back, but not quietly enough. There, Mallister! Gunfire erupted. Jake felt a bullet tug his coat as they ran for the horses. Crow turned, fired 3 quick shots, dropping 2 men. They mounted and rode hard, Bull's curses following them. The church collapsed behind them in a roar of flames and smoke, taking Thomas's secrets with it. That won't stop Webb, Crow said as they rode. No, but it'll confuse him. Buy us time. Time for what? Jake's smile was cold. For Eleanor to do what she does best, turn the tables. They arrived back in Deadwood to find the town transformed into an armed camp. Webb's men held strategic positions. Guns visible, townspeople huddled in their homes. But the sheriff's office was surrounded by unexpected defenders, 20 Lakota warriors, Red Sky at their head. Thought you could use help, Red Sky said as Jake dismounted. How did you? Eleanor sent word. My sister's daughter asked, I came. Inside, Jake found Eleanor sitting up in bed, looking pale but determined. The twins slept peacefully in a cradle Maria had found. You burned the church, Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. Had to. Bull was coming. Good. That means Webb will be desperate, she smiled. Desperate men make mistakes. Eleanor, what are you planning? Webb wants the fortune. I'll give him exactly what he wants. She pulled out a map, marked a location. The Lakota burial grounds, sacred land. You can't... I'm not actually giving him anything, because there's nothing there but graves. Her smile turned predatory. But Webb doesn't know that, and violating sacred burial grounds, well, that's something even corrupt soldiers can't explain away. You're going to trap him. I'm going to give him enough rope to hang himself. Eleanor stood carefully, Jake rushing to steady her. Red Sky's warriors will be watching. The moment Webb's men start digging up graves, they attack. Eleanor kissed him. Thomas left one final gift in his journal. Webb murdered a federal judge 2 years ago. There's proof in those documents you saved. That's enough to hang him. Only if we survive to use it. The hour passed too quickly. Eleanor kissed each twin, whispered promises she might not keep. Then, supported by Jake, she walked to where Webb waited with horses. You ride with me, Webb told Eleanor. Insurance against tricks. She can barely sit up, Jake protested. Then she'll lean on me. Webb's smile was cold. Unless you'd prefer I take one of the babies instead. Eleanor mounted the horse with difficulty, biting back gasps of pain. Jake saw blood already seeping through her dress. The burial grounds are 5 miles north, Eleanor said. Follow the old trade road. The procession moved out, Webb and Eleanor in front, Jake and Crow, behind with guns at their backs, Bull and 15 men surrounding them. Red Sky's warriors shadowed them, invisible in the trees. The burial grounds were eerily beautiful in the winter sun. Sacred poles marked with symbols, mounds of stone covered in snow, the silence of held breath. Where? Webb demanded. Eleanor pointed to the largest mound. There, under the chief's marker. Start digging, Webb ordered his men. That's sacred ground, Jake said. You can't. Bull's rifle butt to his stomach cut him off. Jake went down, gasping. Dig faster, Webb commanded. The shovels bit into frozen earth. Every strike felt like sacrilege. Eleanor watched with hooded eyes, hand pressed to her still bleeding side. Then a war cry split the air. Red Sky's warriors attacked from 3 directions, arrows finding gaps in coats between ribs. Webb's men scrambled for cover or returning fire, but the warriors were already moving, using the sacred poles and mounds as cover. Webb grabbed Eleanor, gun to her head. Call them off. They're not mine to command, Eleanor said calmly. You violated sacred ground. This is the consequence. Then you die. The hidden gun was in Eleanor's hand before Webb could react. She shot him through the thigh, twisting away as he screamed. Jake was already moving, tackling Bull before the big man could shoot Eleanor. They rolled in the snow, fighting for Bull's gun. You should have stayed dead in Scorpion Gulch, Jake snarled. Morrison should have let me kill you that first day, Bull replied. Jake headbutted him, grabbed the gunshot Bull twice in the chest. The big man looked surprised, then fell backward into the violated grave. Around them, the battle raged. Webb's men were better armed, but Red Sky's warriors knew the terrain, used it ruthlessly. Bodies fell on both sides. Eleanor crawled toward Jake, leaving a trail of blood in the snow. The documents. Webb needs to confess. You're bleeding. I'm dying. She said it matter-of-factly. Chen was right. I shouldn't have ridden. No. Jake pulled her against him, pressing his hands to her wounds. You're not dying. You can't. The twins need you. I need you. The twins have you. Eleanor touched his face with a bloody hand. And you're stronger than you know. Webb was dragging himself toward them, leg, useless face twisted with rage and pain. You bitch, you've destroyed everything. Good, Eleanor said. Though really you destroyed yourself. We just helped. Webb raised his gun toward her. Jake moved to shield Eleanor, but she pushed him aside with surprising strength. The gun fired. Eleanor gasped, new blood blooming across her chest. No? Jake's roar was primal. He turned on Webb, but Crow was already there, rifle aimed at Webb's head. You murdered a federal judge, Crow said calmly. Judge Watson 2 years ago. Made it look like a robbery. Webb's face went white. You can't prove. Your correspondence with Thomas Mallister says otherwise. Crow pulled out the documents Jake had saved. Amazing what dead men write down. Those are forgeries. Maybe, but Marshal Brennan will want to investigate. Of course, that's assuming you survive. Crow looked around at the battle still raging. Not looking good for your men. It was true. Webb's forces were falling back, overwhelmed by Red Sky's warriors and the townspeople who'd finally joined the fight. Surrender, Jake said, cradling Eleanor. It's over. Webb looked at his dying men, at Eleanor bleeding out in the snow at the violated sacred ground. You've won nothing. There are others. Powerful men who... Red Sky's arrow took him in the throat. Webb gurgled, eyes wide with shock, then fell forward. He talked too much, Red Sky said simply. The battle was over. Webb's surviving men threw down their weapons, surrounded and outnumbered. But Jake didn't care about any of it. Eleanor, stay with me. She was so pale, her breathing shallow. The twins. Tell them their mother loved them. Tell them she was brave. Tell them yourself. Can't. Too tired. Her eyes found his. Jake, I'm here. Was I a good wife even for a fake marriage? The best, the strongest woman I ever knew. Eleanor smiled. Liar, but sweet. Her hand found his. Thank you. For choosing me. For seeing past the scars. Eleanor, please. Take care of our babies, all 3 of them. 3. Didn't tell you. Chen said I'm pregnant again. Yours this time. She coughed blood on her lips. Surprise. Jake's world shattered. No, you can't leave. Not now. Not leaving, just resting. So tired, Jake. So tired of fighting. Then rest, but don't go, please. Eleanor's eyes fluttered closed. Her breathing grew softer, softer. No. Jake shook her gently. Eleanor. Chen appeared, dropping beside them, hands already checking Eleanor's wounds. Get her to the wagon. Now there's still a chance. Jake carried Eleanor to the wagon, her blood soaking his coat. The ride back to town was the longest of his life, Chen working frantically to stop the bleeding while Jake held Eleanor's hand and prayed to gods he'd never believed in. The surgery took 6 hours. Jake paced outside the twins, crying in Maria's arms, Red Sky standing silent guard. Crow organized the prisoners, dealt with the aftermath, but Jake noticed none of it. Finally, Chen emerged exhausted and bloodstained. She's alive, he said, and Jake's knees nearly buckled. Barely. The next day will tell. She's strong, but she's lost so much blood. Can I see her? She's unconscious. Will be for hours, maybe days. Chen gripped Jake's shoulder. She might not wake up, Jake. You should prepare yourself. She'll wake up. She has to. Jake sat by Eleanor's bed for 3 days. The twins lay in their cradle beside her as if their presence might call her back. He talked to her, told her about the town, celebrating about Webb's men, confessing everything about Marshal Brennan, arriving to clean up the mess. Morrison's in federal custody, he told her unconscious form. He'll hang within the month. We won, Eleanor. You won. On the 3rd night, as Jake dozed in his chair, a weak voice woke him. Did you just say, I won? Jake's eyes snapped open. Eleanor was looking at him, pale as death, but alive. Eleanor, shh, sleeping babies. She looked at the twins. They're bigger. It's been 3 days. 3 days. She tried to sit up, gasped in pain. Webb, dead. His conspiracy exposed. It's over. Nothing's ever over in Deadwood. But she smiled. We did it. You did it. That plan with the burial grounds was brilliant. It was desperate, but it worked. She touched her stomach carefully. The baby. Still there. Chen says if you rest, really rest, everything should be fine. 3 babies. We're going to need a bigger house. We'll build one. Build whatever you want. Jake kissed her gently. Just don't ever almost die on me again. Can't promise that. Trouble seems to find us. Then we'll face it together. Together. Eleanor agreed, then winced. After I heal, and after you change your shirt, is that my blood? Most of it. Romantic. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching their children sleep. Outside Deadwood Junction was quiet, finally at peace. Jake. Yeah. What I said when I thought I was dying, about being a good wife. You're the best wife any man could ask for. Even with all the gunfights and conspiracies and nearly dying, especially with those, life with you is never boring. Eleanor laughed, then gasped as it pulled her stitches. Ow, don't make me laugh. Sorry. No, you're not. No, I'm not. A knock at the door interrupted them. Red Sky entered, smiling at seeing Eleanor awake. Little sister, you scared us. Takes more than bullets to kill a Thornwood. McAllister, Jake corrected. Takes more than bullets to kill a McAllister. McAllister. Eleanor agreed, and the name had never sounded better. Red Sky sat beside the bed. My warriors have cleansed the burial ground. The spirits are at peace. Thank you, Uncle. There's more. The tribal council wants to honor you both. When you're healed, you'll be welcomed as family to all Lakota. That's... Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. That's everything my mother wanted. She would be proud. You've become a bridge between worlds, just as she was. After Red Sky left, Jake carefully lay beside Eleanor, mindful of her wounds. She curled into him, fitting perfectly despite everything. What now? She asked. Now you heal. We raise our children, build that bigger house. And if more men like Webb come, then we stop them. Together. Simple as that. Simple as that. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. I love you, Jake McAllister. I love you too, Eleanor McAllister. Even though I'm difficult and dangerous and currently held together by stitches, especially then. As dawn broke over Deadwood Junction, painting the sky in shades of hope, the unlikely family lay together, a scarred woman who'd lived for revenge, finding love, a failed protector, finding redemption, and 3 children who would grow up knowing their parents would face any storm for them. The strongest woman Jake had ever known had survived again. And their story was far from over. 10 years had passed since Eleanor McAllister nearly died in the snow, and Deadwood Junction had transformed from a den of corruption to the most lawful town west of the Mississippi. Mama David's putting spiders in my lunch pail again. Eleanor looked up from the sheriff's desk where she was teaching her youngest James his letters. Hope stood in the doorway, 11 years old, and the spitting image of her mother's scarred chin and all, courtesy of a fall from her horse last summer. David McAllister, Eleanor called, get in here. Her eldest son appeared, trying to look innocent despite the jar of spiders poorly hidden behind his back. At 11, David had Jake's stubborn jaw, but Eleanor's calculating eyes. Yes, Mama. What have I told you about tormenting your sister, that it builds character? That was your father. I said it would get you a week of mucking stables. But Hope put a snake in my bed yesterday. That was a stick, Hope protested. You're just a scaredy cat. I'm not. Artuta, enough. Eleanor stood, her presence still commanding despite the gray threading through her dark hair. Both of you stable duty, now. But Mama, they protested in unison, now, or I'll tell your father about who really broke the church window. They fled. James, 9 years old and too smart for everyone's good, looked up from his slate. It was David, wasn't it? David threw the ball, but Hope dared him. Eleanor ruffled his hair. Sometimes the guilt is shared, little one. Like you and Papa share the sheriff duties. Exactly like that. The door opened, bringing cold autumn air, and Jake McAllister, still tall and strong at 41, though his temples were silver now. Prisoners are transferred to the federal marshal, he reported, kissing Eleanor's cheek. That's the last of the Wallace gang. Good riddance. Eleanor leaned into him. Any word from Marshal Brennan? He's coming. Should be here by sunset. Jake's expression darkened. Eleanor, he said it's important, about Morrison. Eleanor stiffened. Morrison's dead. Hanged 10 years ago. His legacy isn't. Jake pulled out a telegram. Remember those powerful friends Webb mentioned? They're making moves. Something big is coming. Before Eleanor could respond, commotion erupted outside. Gunshots, screams, the thunder of many horses. Stay here, Jake commanded James, who immediately disobeyed and ran to the window. Papa, there's lots of men, and they have guns. Eleanor was already strapping on her pistol, her movement still fluid despite the old injuries that ached in cold weather. How many? 40, maybe 50 from... Jake said, looking out. Military precision. This isn't random. They stepped onto the porch together to find the town surrounded. At the head of the riders sat a man Eleanor recognized from old wanted posters, Colonel Harrison Pike, the butcher of Beaumont Ridge. Sheriff McAllister, Pike called out, his voice cultured despite the evil in it. And the lovely Mrs. McAllister. I've heard so much about you both. Town's closed to murderers, Eleanor said flatly. Move along. Pike laughed. Such spirit, I see why Thomas was fascinated with you. Don't speak his name, Jake warned. Oh, but I must. You see, Thomas McAllister was my protege. Before you killed him, he was helping me plan something magnificent. Pike dismounted his men's guns, tracking every movement in town. The complete restructuring of the Western Territories. Into what? Eleanor demanded. A empire. My empire. Pike smiled. Morrison was small time. Webb was a fool. But I have the president's ear, half of Congress in my pocket, and now I have you. Like hell you do. Check your home, Mrs. McAllister. Eleanor's blood went cold. She turned to run back inside, but one of Pike's men was already dragging James out, knife to the boy's throat. "Mama!" James cried out, then bit his captor's hand. The man cursed, but didn't let go. "Let him go." Jake stepped forward, gun drawn. Pike waggled a finger. "My men have your other children, too. The twins are being collected from school as we speak." Eleanor's hand went to her gun, but 20 rifles swung her way. "Here's what's going to happen," Pike continued. "You're going to sign over the sheriff's office to my man. You're going to publicly support my appointment as territorial governor, and you're going to give me the real location of Thomas's fortune." "We burned it," Jake said. "No, you burned the church, but Thomas was too smart to hide everything in one place." Pike pulled out a journal, one Eleanor recognized with sickening certainty. His real journal, not the one you found. This one mentions a map only Eleanor would understand. "I don't know what you're talking about," Pike nodded to his man. The knife pressed harder against James's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. "Stop!" Eleanor's composure cracked. "Stop! I'll help you." "Eleanor, no," Jake warned. "He has our children." She looked at Pike. "The map's hidden. I need an hour to retrieve it. You have 30 minutes, and you go alone. Your husband stays here as insurance." Eleanor met Jake's eyes, saw him understand. They'd danced this dance before. She nodded. "Slightly, trust me." As she walked toward the old cemetery, Eleanor's mind raced. The map Pike wanted didn't exist, but Thomas had left something, a final message hidden where only she would look. Her mother's grave. Eleanor knelt before the weathered stone, brushing away dead leaves. There, carved small beneath her mother's name, "The truth will set you free, TM." She dug carefully, her fingers finding the oilcloth package Thomas had buried. Inside were documents that made her stomach turn. Pike's entire plan written in Thomas's hand. Mass murder disguised as Indian raids, assassination of political rivals, the systematic destruction of anyone who stood in Pike's way. And at the bottom, a note. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm dead and Pike has come. I'm sorry for everything. Stop him. You're the only one who can. The evidence here will hang him, but only if you're smart about it. Be the woman I couldn't be brave enough to do what's right." Touching, isn't it? Eleanor spun. Pike stood behind her, alone, gun drawn. "You followed me." "Of course. Did you think I'd trust you?" He held out his hand. "The documents. Now. You'll kill my family anyway." "Probably. But if you cooperate, I'll make it quick. If not..." His smile was cold. "I'll make you watch them die slowly." Eleanor stood the package in her hands. "You want these? Come get them." She threw the package not to him, but into the old well beside the cemetery. Pike lunged for it, cursing. The moment he looked away, Eleanor moved. The derringer hidden in her boot was in her hand, firing. Pike screamed, clutching his shoulder, his gun falling. Eleanor kicked it away, then grabbed him by the throat. "You made 2 mistakes," she said quietly. "First, you threatened my children. Second, you came alone. My men are about to be very busy." As if on cue, war cries erupted from the town. Red Sky's warriors, hidden for hours, attacked from concealed positions. The cemetery hill gave Eleanor a clear view of the battle erupting below. "You planned this," Pike gasped. "I've had 10 years to prepare for someone like you." Eleanor's smile was sharp. "Did you really think we'd beaten Morrison and Webb just to let another tyrant take their place?" She whistled 3 sharp notes. From the trees emerged Samuel Crow Marshal Brennan and 20 federal deputies. "Colonel Harrison Pike," Brennan said formally, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and treason. You can't prove anything. The documents are in the well." Those documents. Eleanor pulled the real package from inside her coat. These were decoys. The real ones are already on their way to Washington, along with signed testimonies from 12 of your men who we arrested last week. Pike's face went purple. "You bitch! You planned all of this." "Language, Colonel." Eleanor turned to Brennan. "My children. Safe. We grabbed them before Pike's men could. They're with Dr. Chen and Maria at the church." Relief flooded through Eleanor. Below, the battle was already ending. Pike's men, caught between warriors and deputies, were surrendering. "It's over, Pike," Eleanor said. "No." Pike pulled a hidden knife, lunging at Eleanor. The shot came from below. Pike stopped, looked down at the spreading red on his chest, then toppled backward. Jake stood at the base of the hill, smoking rifle in hand. "Nobody threatens my wife." Eleanor ran down to him, threw her arms around his neck. "Nice shot." "I've been practicing." He held her tight. The children, safe, all safe. They hurried back to town where chaos was giving way to order. David and Hope ran to them, James limping but grinning in Maria's arms. "Mama, Papa, did you see?" David was bouncing with excitement. The warriors came from nowhere, and Hope hit one of the bad men with her slingshot. "He was going to hurt Mrs. Chen," Hope said defensively. Eleanor gathered all three children close. "You were all so brave." "Like you and Papa?" James asked. "Braver," Jake said, ruffling his hair. As the federal deputies rounded up Pike's men, Red Sky approached. His hair was completely white now, but he still moved like a warrior. "The last of Morrison's legacy dies today," he said. "Good riddance," Eleanor replied, "though there will be others." "There always are, but now you have something Morrison never expected, a town that stands together." It was true. The townspeople had fought alongside the warriors and deputies. Deadwood Junction had become a community that protected its own. That evening, as the sun set over the mountains, the Mallister family sat on their porch, the big house Jake had built with rooms for each child and space for the life they'd created. "Tell us the story," Hope demanded. "Which one?" Eleanor asked, though she knew. "How you and Papa met. You've heard it 100 times." "Tell it anyway," David said. "The real version, not the cleaned-up one." Jake laughed. "Your mother was pointing a shotgun at my face. Because you crashed through my store bleeding and brought trouble with you," Eleanor added. "Best trouble I ever caused," Jake said, kissing her temple. "Papa was running from bad men," James recited. "And Mama saved him." "Then Papa saved Mama," Hope continued. "Then we saved each other," David finished. "Again and again." "That's right," Eleanor said. "And what's the lesson?" "Family isn't just blood," the three children said in unison. "It's who stands with you when the bullets fly." "Ma would be proud," Jake murmured to Eleanor. "Both our mothers would be." A rider approached Crow, returning from the telegraph office. "News from Washington," he called. "Pike's conspiracy has been exposed all the way to the top. 12 senators arrested, 3 generals court-martialed. You two are heroes, again." "We're retired," Eleanor said firmly. "That's what you said last time, and the time before that." "This time I mean it," Crow laughed. "Sure you do. By the way, there's a letter here, from the president." Jake took the letter, read it, his eyebrows rising. "He's offering us federal positions, head of a new department investigating corruption in the territories." "Tell him no," Eleanor said immediately. "Eleanor, I'm 40 years old, Jake. I've been shot 4 times, stabbed twice, and nearly died more times than I can count. I want to watch our children grow up without wondering if today's the day they lose us." Jake nodded, pulled her close. "You're right. Crow, tell the president thank you, but we're done." "You sure?" Eleanor looked at her family. Jake still strong and steady after all these years. The twins growing into remarkable young people. James too smart and too brave for his own good. "I'm sure. Deadwood Junction is our home. These people are our responsibility." "And if trouble comes again," Crow asked, "then we'll face it, here, together." As Crow rode away, the family settled into comfortable silence. The twins started arguing about something trivial. James pulled out a book. Jake and Eleanor sat close, hands intertwined, watching the stars appear. "Any regrets?" Jake asked quietly. "About what?" "Our life. It's been unconventional." Eleanor laughed. "Unconventional, that's one word for it. Would you change anything?" Eleanor thought about it. The pain, the loss, the violence, it had all led here to this moment, this family, this love that had grown from convenience to necessity to something beyond words. "Not a thing," she said, "except maybe getting shot less." "Fair point." "Jake, yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For seeing past the scars, for choosing me when you could have run, for being the father to all 3 of our children that neither of us had." "Eleanor Mallister, you saved me that first day and you've been saving me ever since." "We saved each other." "That we did." A scream from inside broke the moment. Hope's voice. "Mama, David put a real snake in my bed this time. David Mallister." Eleanor stood her sheriff's voice in full force. "If I have to come in there—" "It was just a little garden snake," David protested. "It was not little," Hope shouted. Eleanor sighed, but she was smiling. "I'll handle this." "Need backup," Jake offered. "Always." They walked inside together to restore peace, leaving the stars to witness what they'd built, a family forged in gunfire, tempered by trials and stronger than any storm the frontier could throw at them. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Eleanor stood at their bedroom window looking out at Deadwood Junction. The town slept peacefully, windows glowing with lamplight, families safe in their homes. "Penny for your thoughts," Jake said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking how different it all is from that first day. When you shot at Morrison's men through your store window. When I thought I'd die alone, defined only by revenge. You were never going to die alone. Too stubborn. Too mean, you mean? Too magnificent." Eleanor turned in his arms. "We've built something good here." "We have. Think it will last?" "Nothing lasts forever, but we've taught the next generation to fight for what's right. That's all anyone can do." A soft cry from down the hall. James having nightmares again. Eleanor started to go, but Jake stopped her. "I'll get him." Eleanor watched Jake comfort their youngest patient, and gentle in ways his own father never was. This was what victory looked like, not the defeat of enemies, but the quiet moments of peace earned through struggle. She thought of her parents dead these 20 years. Of Thomas, brilliant and broken, of Morrison and Webb and pikemen who confused power with purpose. They'd all fallen, but she and Jake remained scarred but standing. "Mama." Hope appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Can't sleep." "Bad dreams." "No, just thinking." "About—" Hope climbed into Eleanor's lap, still small enough at 11 to fit through barely. "About when I grow up. I want to be like you. A sheriff. A protector, someone who stands up to bad men." Eleanor's throat tightened. "That's a hard path, little one. You did it. I had help. Your father, your uncles, Red Sky and Crow, Aunt Maria, Dr. Chen. Nobody stands alone. Then I'll find my own help, my own family to stand with." Eleanor kissed her daughter's head, breathing in the scent of youth and possibility. "I'm sure you will." "Mama?" "Yes." "Was it worth it? All the fighting?" Eleanor looked at her daughter, scarred already from her own small battles, eyes bright with determination. Behind them, Jake carried a sleeping James back to bed, while David read by candlelight, too much like his parents to sleep when thoughts were spinning. Every scar, every bullet, every moment of fear. Eleanor held Hope tighter. "It was all worth it to get here to this moment with you." Hope nodded, satisfied, and curled closer. Within minutes, she was asleep. Jake returned, smiled at the sight of them. "Want me to carry her to bed?" "In a moment." They stood together, their sleeping daughter between them, looking out at their town, their world, their life built from ashes and determination. "You know there'll be more trouble," Jake said quietly. "There always is." "I know. The children will want to fight. It's in their blood. Then we'll teach them to fight smart, to fight together, to fight for something more than revenge." What could be more than revenge? Eleanor smiled, thinking of her journey from that angry, scarred woman in a general store to this mother-wife-protector-builder of something lasting. "Hope," she said simply. "We fight for hope." As if in response, their daughter stirred, murmured something about tomorrow's adventures, and settled deeper into sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. It always did in Deadwood Junction. But tonight the Mallister family was whole, safe, and together. The unwanted frontier wife had become the heart of a town. The broken cowboy had become the father he'd never had. And their children would grow up knowing that love wasn't just a feeling, it was a choice made again and again in the face of every storm. "Ready for bed?" Jake asked. "Almost." Eleanor walked to their dresser, pulled out a worn journal. She'd been writing their story bit by bit for the children to have someday. She dipped her pen and wrote, "To my beloved children, David, Hope, and James, and to those who may come after. This is the true story of how your parents met, fought, nearly died, and chose each other anyway. It's not a pretty story, nor a simple one, but it's ours. Your father says I'm the strongest woman he ever knew, But strength isn't just about surviving bullets or winning fights. It's about choosing love over fear, hope over hatred, building over burning. We named you Hope because that's what you represented, hope for something better than what we'd known. David, for my father who stood against corruption even when it cost him everything. James, for your father's middle name connecting past to future. You'll face your own battles. The frontier is changing, but there will always be those who take what isn't theirs, who hurt others for gain, who mistake might for right. When that happens, remember, you are McAllisters. You are descendants of warriors and lawmen, of survivors and builders. You have Lakota wisdom and frontier stubbornness in your blood. But most importantly, you have each other. Stand together, protect the innocent, choose courage even when afraid, and know that your parents loved you more than words could ever say. The world will tell you that scars make you less beautiful, that strength makes you less feminine, that gentleness makes you less masculine. The world is wrong. Your scars are maps of survival. Your strength is your birthright. Your gentleness is your power. Be who you are fully and without apology. And if you ever doubt your path, remember this: your mother was called unwanted, unmarriageable, too scarred and strange for love. Your father was called a failure, unable to save those he loved most. Yet here we are. Here you are. Proof that the world's judgments mean nothing compared to the choices we make and the love we choose. Live boldly. Love fiercely. Stand for something. All our love, Mama and Papa. P.S. Your father wants me to add that if any of you put snakes in anyone's bed, you'll muck stables for a month. He's not joking. E.M. Eleanor set down the pen, closed the journal. Someday when she and Jake were gone, their children would read these words and know they were loved, know they came from something more than violence and pain. "Coming to bed," Jake called. "Coming?" She walked to their room, paused at each child's door to check they were sleeping. David had fallen asleep over his book. Hope was sprawled like a starfish. James was curled tight, thumb in mouth, though he'd die of embarrassment if anyone mentioned it. These were her treasures, not gold or land or power, but these three souls who called her Mama. Jake was already in bed, the lamp turned low. Eleanor slipped in beside him, fitting against his side like she had for 10 years now. "I love you." She said words that had once seemed impossible, now as natural as breathing. "I love you too, even with all your scars." "Because of them," she corrected. "Because of them," he agreed. Outside, an owl called. The wind whispered through the canyon. Deadwood Junction slept, protected by two unlikely souls who'd found each other in violence and chose to build something from the ashes. Jake, if you had to do it all again at the chase, the fake marriage, Thomas Morrison, all of it, would you? Jake was quiet for a moment. Every single time. Even the getting shot part, especially that, can't have you thinking I'm soft. Eleanor laughed, muffling it in his shoulder. You are soft, at least with the children. Our secret. Our secret. They lay together in comfortable silence, two hearts beating as one scarred hands intertwined. Tomorrow would come with its challenges. The twins would fight. James would ask too many questions. Someone would need the sheriff. The world would keep turning, bringing new troubles and new triumphs. But tonight, Elellanar McAllister, the unwanted frontier wife, who'd become the strongest woman in the territory, closed her eyes and smiled. She'd won more than revenge, more than justice. She'd won a life worth living. And that was the greatest victory of all. The end epilogue. 20 years later. The letter came on a Tuesday, delivered by a young Pinkerton who looked nervous standing on the McAllister porch. Sheriff McAllister, he asked the woman who answered. Hope McAllister, 31, and sheriff for the past 3 years, studied him with her mother's calculating eyes. That's me. What can I do for you? I have a message from Washington about your brother. Hope's hand went to her gun. Which one? David McAllister. There's been an incident. Before Hope could respond, James appeared beside her, medical bag in hand. At 29, he'd become the finest doctor in 3 territories, trained by Chen before the old man passed. David's in trouble, James asked. When isn't he? Hope muttered, but worry colored her tone. David had left 5 years ago to join the Pinkertons, following in the footsteps of the father he'd idolized. Last they'd heard, he was investigating corruption in California. He's alive, the young agent said quickly. But he needs help. He's uncovered something big. Bigger than anything since Pike. Hope and James exchanged glances. Their parents had retired 5 years ago, finally truly stepped back. Jake's hair was white now. Eleanor moved slower, her old wounds aching. They'd earned their peace. "We'll handle it," Hope said. He asked for your parents specifically, said only they would understand the connection to Thomas Mallister. The siblings went rigid. Uncle Thomas, the family ghost, the cautionary tale, the reminder that good people could go bad. "Thomas has been dead for 30 years, James said carefully. "His legacy isn't. Your brother found something. Documents, plans, people who were waiting for the right moment to resurrect his empire." Hope looked back at the house where their parents were probably reading, enjoying their hard-won peace. "Give us the details," she said. "We'll decide what to tell them." But Eleanor was already in the doorway, older, but still formidable at 60. "Tell us what—" "Mama," Hope started. "I heard Thomas's name." Eleanor's green eyes were still sharp. "What about him?" Jake appeared beside her, leaning on the cane he'd finally accepted 2 winters ago. "Eleanor, maybe the kids can handle— Our son is in trouble," Eleanor said flatly, "and it involves Thomas. We're not sitting this out." "You're retired," Hope protested. "From being sheriff, not from being parents." Eleanor looked at the young Pinkerton. "You have 20 seconds to tell me everything or I start shooting toes." "Gee, she's joking," Jake said. Eleanor cocked her pistol. "Am I—" The agent talked. Fast. David had uncovered a group calling themselves the legacy children and grandchildren of Morrison, Webb, Pike, and others the Mallisters had stopped. They'd been planning for 20 years, and they had Thomas's original blueprint for territorial domination. "David infiltrated them," the agent finished, "but his cover's blown. He's trapped in San Francisco with evidence that could stop them, but they have an army between him and safety." Eleanor and Jake looked at each other, 30 years of partnership in that glance. "Get the horses," Eleanor said. "Eleanor, we're too old," Jake started. "We're too old to let our son die alone." She turned to Hope and James. "You two are coming. Family tradition Mallisters stand together." "What about the town?" Hope asked. "Crow's grandson can watch it. Boy's been itching for responsibility." As they prepared to leave, Eleanor stood in her bedroom looking at the wedding certificate framed on the wall. A fake marriage that became real. A partnership born of desperation that became love. "Ready?" Jake asked from the doorway. "I thought we were done. I thought we'd won." "Evil doesn't stay dead, love. It just waits for good people to get tired." "We are tired, but not too tired to save our son." Eleanor strapped on her gun, the motion still smooth after all these years. "You know this could kill us. Lots of things could have killed us. Haven't yet. Jake Mallister, eternal optimist. Eleanor Mallister, eternal fighter." They walked out together toward whatever waited in San Francisco. Hope and James were already mounted, looking so much like their parents had 30 years ago, determined, dangerous, united. "You know," Eleanor said as she mounted her horse, "I'm starting to think trouble doesn't find us." "Oh, we're Mallisters. We find trouble. It's what we do." "And then," Jake asked, though he knew the answer, "then we end it, together." They rode out as the sun set, 4 Mallisters against an army, odds that would have been impossible for anyone else. But they weren't anyone else. They were the family that had brought down Morrison, Webb, and Pike. The family that had turned Deadwood Junction from corrupt to incorruptible. The family that stood together when bullets flew. And somewhere in San Francisco, David Mallister held his position, wounded but not broken, knowing with absolute certainty that his family was coming. Because that's what Mallisters did. They stood together, always.